Welcome back to Hidden Power. This is a Pokemon podcast. We are joined by an expert in the Pokemon Video Game Championship format. We will be discussing the current state of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and looking ahead towards Pokemon Legends ZA, as well as potential games that we could see in the future in Generation 10. We discussed the possibilities of new battle gimmicks, new battle items, new Pokemon moves, potential mega evolutions, anything that has to do with the competitive landscape we discuss in this episode. My name is DustyGogoat. Today I'm with the LumiosePost and our guest, Scooteezy. So, Scott, thank you so much for being here today, man. Tell the people who you are.
My name is Scott, aka Scooteezy, Scooteezy VGC on Twitter as well. Just a VGC player. You know, I play the game, I enjoy it. Love all things Pokemon. So,
you know what we should probably actually do for the audience is define what VGC is, because that word is thrown around a lot. Our own member Lumi is a VGC player. The guy has competed. At
feels
actual
wrong
tournaments.
To call me that, honestly.
Bro, but you are though, right? So I just want to, we got to dumb this down for me, and we got to dumb this down for maybe the audience. I don't want to assume the intelligence of the audience, but what is VGC?
So VGC is the official competitive format for Pokemon. It is 4v4 double battles. So, you know, you bring 6, pick 4, and yeah, we normally play everything in best of 3. And with Generation 9 now, it's all open team sheet. So yeah, I guess that's what it is when we play at least VGC at like IRL events. Yeah,
and it's for the audience. What does the open team sheet show?
I was gonna ask that.
Yeah, so you basically get to see all information about a Pokemon besides its EVs and IVs, or its stat points, I should say. So you get to see, you know, its ability, its Tera type, what moves it has. I think that's it. Am I missing anything? Oh, it's item as well. That was it. So item, ability, Tera type, all their moves. So
it's how you tell which Urshifu it is, because the sprite's the same.
Yeah. So that's a pretty controversial one as well, because for as long as Urshi's been in the game, you don't know what it is. Even on Pokemon Showdown, if you play these days, you don't know what Urshi it is until it hits the board. Whereas like the Ogerpons, for example, you know what form they are. So like you know, like, oh, that's a Hearthflame, that's it's a Wellspring Mask, but you know, Urshi
and sometimes you want to know which size Pumpkaboo you're dealing with as well, right? Am I right, guys?
That's not in the game. I think it did.
Is it actually good?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not in the game?
No.
I think that there was a stage, a good friend of mine, Lucky VGC, he brought it to, I want to say like, I don't know if it was a Sun and Moon, I think it was a Sun and Moon event, but the size mattered because they have different stats. So I think the biggest one's the slowest one. Yeah, so I might actually even pull that up on the side here. I'm pretty sure the biggest Pumpkaboo is the slowest Pumpkaboo.
Wow.
Or is it's Gourgeist, isn't it?
Yeah, Gourgeist is the
So they've got different stats based on their size.
I am so impressed by you VGC players. I literally feel like I'm being bullied by math geeks. Like you guys, like you guys,
the nerds have the power now.
I know. I have no idea. You guys are talking circles around me.
Just for your reference here, Dusty, the smaller one is faster, does not hit as hard, and has less HP. But the bigger one is slower but bulkier and hits harder. That's cool. The size on the Gourgeist actually does matter. Because I believe people used to run it here first, back in the day. Size does matter, especially in VGC.
All right. Well, okay. So, dude, just to get you acclimated, right? We have Pokemon Legends ZA announced to us. Where are you feeling with this? Are you excited for the game? Is it too far out? And then maybe we can talk about the implications of this game, what could be in this game, and how that could potentially affect the competitive scene.
So I'm excited for every Pokemon game. It's just how I am. I love it. I'm excited. I love watching obviously all the speculation and whatnot on it. It's also in the Kalos region as well. So that's was actually the game that got me back into Pokemon after a couple-year break. So I am super excited for it. I can't wait. Obviously, the addition of Megas as well is very fun. Love Mega Evolution. I hope we get to play with Mega Salamence in VGC again. I'm super excited for it. Obviously, we don't know when it's coming out. I guess that's the big question at the minute, right? Are we going to get it early next year? Because, you know, the rumors now are saying Switch, or the new Switch or whatever is going to be, I think March is what I read. March next year.
It's going to be revealed by March is what they said.
Okay, so they were saying, revealed by March. All right.
So that means it's not coming out until the end of the year. It's got to be, right? They're not going to announce a game and then drop it next month.
I think the Switch, they only revealed like 2 months before its release. I think. Wow. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure on the Switch either. But yeah, I guess the question is it going to be a Switch launch title? Are we just going to get it in January like we did last year with with Legends?
There's been rumbling that like it could be a potentially a launch game, which actually would be pretty exciting. I feel like Legends Arceus was developed with the inspiration, like taking inspiration from Zelda games. But I feel like also a lot of people, I feel like even the visual style of these games, they feel like spiritually the same as a Zelda game. So I could see Nintendo wanting to, have a similar game for that launch window, right? Just like we got Breath of the Wild with the Switch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is going to be the big question, right? Is like one, you would assume it's going to be out on the Switch regardless if it comes out. Sorry, Switch 2 regardless of when it drops, right? Whether it's a launch title or we get it and then eventually gets a port.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the big question is when does the Switch 2 drop, and I guess how does that affect PLZA, right? Because you would think it would make sense to help ship consoles, right? Like, you need games to make people want to buy the console.
Yeah, and I don't think Pokemon has ever been a launch title. It's
never.
What is it?
Really, I mean,
is it even eligible to be that? Like, what are launch titles? Like either Mario or Zelda?
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
normally.
What defines when
Odyssey,
you have to release to be a launch title? Like
I think
the day.
I think
it's the day it drops. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure Mario Odyssey was a launch title. It was like, the Switch drops today. So did Mario Odyssey.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Breath of the Wild
was it not. I think it was.
Breath of the Wild was Wii U as well, so it might have been actually.
I think it 100% was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Breath of the Wild was Wii U as well.
Yeah,
I don't think it was a good port.
So
on
we
Wii
could
U.
see something like that. That would line up with
Yeah.
Legend. Like if Legend ZA does come out on Switch, which I think they're saying it will be on Switch, right? It could drop, but then also be available in a higher resolution or a higher performing game on the Switch too.
I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but I'm pretty sure Centro said that it will be backwards compatible. Like one of their leakers has told them, like all Switch 2 games or whatever will be backwards compatible, at least to start.
I'm betting that.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm imagining a 3DS scenario where there's games that are made for the Switch 2, but the Switch 2 can still play Switch games.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll just be like a little thing in the cartridge, so you can't put it in the Switch. But,
right.
But I mean, look, it would make sense. Like, there's 180 million Switches or something like that. I saw, out in the world. So if they've sold that many consoles, it wouldn't make sense to not, put a game like PLZA on both, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think Pokemon has been pretty clear. Yeah,
it's gonna be like PS4 graphics.
Whoa.
Which is
look for a handheld. That's pretty good.
That's insane for a handheld. Yeah.
So we'll wait and see, but there's some great games on the PS4. So
I think
wasn't the first Spider-Man game on the PS4, because I know that's one that's like praised.
Wasn't it the PS5?
No, it was PS4.
That's the newest Spider-Man was PS5, but I think the first one was PS4.
Yeah, like I bought my PS4 literally for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the only games I owned on it were like God of War, Spider-Man, Bloodborne, and Final Fantasy VII. So
I bought my PS4 secondhand, I think only to play the new Fallout game that took place in Boston, and then I think I bought like Mass Effect potentially. There weren't too many games I played on it, but so I think the bigger question about Pokemon Legends ZA, right? Because it's exciting that we're getting a continuation of the Legends series, and it's exciting that we're going back to Kalos, and it's exciting that we're going to get Mega Evolutions. But I think the more interesting thing, especially for our conversation today, is like, is this game going to function exactly like Legends Arceus? Is this going to have multiplayer in mind, right? Are we going to be able to battle our friends, trade with our friends? Is this going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, is this going to function like a main series game, or is this going to be burdened by the limitations of Legends Arceus?
So I guess one thing I will say on this, and especially like looking at it from a VGC perspective, is we're in a situation where, one, we don't know where Gen 10 is coming out, right? Is Gen 10 2025 or 2026, right? There are rumors saying, 2026 because that's the 30th anniversary. Others, like Lumia saying 2025, yeah. But the issue is with Scarlet and Violet right now, right? This is, we've got our single restricted format. We're about to go into double restricted. The games normally end on a double restricted format, right? So VGC wise, are we about to sit on a, double restricted format for the next 2 years?
Yeah.
Or are we going to move off it, after this year, right? Are we going to go into a potential black and white remake? Are we going to go into a Pokemon Legends Arceus potentially as well? Oh, sorry, no, what is it? ZA. Pokemon Legends ZA, sorry. Are we going to move over to that game for VGC, right? And I guess going back to the question is, how are they going to evolve Legends? Like, personally, I would love to see them say like, hey, last one was cool and all, but like, let's add multiplayer, right? Let's let you battle with your friends, especially because Megas are back in the game, right? Like it feels like it's a very fan servicey game already. And to me, it doesn't make sense to not have battling, right? Even Pokemon Legends Arceus, it was like, why?
I don't think Legends Arceus would have lost anything if we also had
exactly.
No, it would have only gained.
Yeah,
I mean, in fact, that's something they even added in Daybreak was, not player versus player battling, but they added a battle facility basically, like for you to do more battles.
I mean,
that was the big complaint about it.
I mean, I do think it's important to think, or to I guess. Yeah, because the big thing about Legends Arceus that sets it apart, other than the gameplay, like other than the overworld and the setting, another big thing that sets Legends Arceus apart from the main series games, it's how you battle. It's the battle mechanics, right? It's the fact that you have agile and what is it called? Agile and strong. Right? But then there's also like this pseudo turn-based. It's not even turn-based, because you can kind of like cheese it a little bit to get a couple hits in a row. That's so different, right? That's so different from what you guys play in with VGC. So if we were able to battle in Legends ZA, even against our friends, I'm not totally... Oh, here's an idea. I'm not totally sold that they're going to allow us, or that there's going to be an official competitive capacity to the game. But here's an idea. What if the Legends battle system becomes like almost like a secondary pillar to the VGC? You think that's possible?
Sure, like Pokken.
Like Pokken, like Pokemon Go. Do you think that's possible at all? Because that actually is a separate type. It's somewhere in between. It's somewhere in between Pokken and just like the main series VGC.
I definitely think they could do it. My question is, how will the battle system, I guess, transition into PLZA, right? Because I personally wasn't the biggest fan of strong and agile style.
Most people were not.
Maybe that's just me. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It felt, as Dusty said, very gimmicky, right? Like you could just go into a battle and just go agile attack into strong attack, and it's like, oh, I KO'd them before they could move.
Yeah.
So because of that, like I wasn't the biggest fan, and I think in terms of competitive, they would really have to change things up for it to actually be somewhat balanced. Because at that point, I don't think slow mons would be good at all. Because then, say for example, you're going up against a Trick Room archetype, for example, right? It's like, oh, this guy's going to set his Trick Room, but I can just attack him 4 times before he moves. It's like, oh, I just go double agile into a double strong, and then they lost their Trick Room setter and the game's over.
I mean, it was a pretty big deal though. Like I feel like Legends Arceus changed a lot of features or functionality. They changed a lot of things about. I think weather and the way certain statuses worked.
You're right. I totally forgot about that. They did change the statuses. They did drowsy instead of sleep, and frostbite. Yeah, and frostbite. I actually wish they had kept, because that was kind of cool.
Frostbite needs to come back to the game, because I recently lost a battle where I got blizzard frozen for 7 turns straight, and it's like, it's such an uncompetitive mechanic. And then you just got Frostbite, which is like perfect in my opinion. It's like, oh, you Frostbite like a Flutter Mane. It's like, oh, great. Now they deal half damage. It's fantastic.
I'm curious how much of that carried over to Scarlet and Violet, because I know there were some things that carried over.
Not at all, I don't think. I don't think we got anything.
It wasn't Frostbite. It wasn't Drowsy.
Nah.
What about, they changed Hail to Snowstorm or something, right?
Yeah, so Snow's really good. Ice types are seeing a big spike. Like, obviously, we saw Articuno win a regional. Cool. Which was really, really cool, because it becomes insanely bulky. I've been testing out Kyurem White as well in Snow. Again, it just... Doubling a defense stat in a metagame that is so physically physically offensive is really good, right? Like the change to Snow was actually, I think, very, very good. I think I just wish it kept the chip damage like what Sand has. Because it feels like they gave it the buff Sand had. Because I don't know if you know, Dusty, but rock types in Sand get like 1.5 times boost to their special defense stat.
I do know that.
Which is like really good for mons like Tita. It just makes them like insanely bulky.
Yeah, just for the listeners, just to give myself a little bit of credit, right? I followed competitive until about like midway through Generation 7, I think. And then I was like, I can't keep up. It's changed.
He's a good battler.
It's changed
just
too much.
Single battles. I don't know how
I'm
he's
good
doing
at
a
singles,
battle, but he's a
and
good
I
single
only
battler.
battle my friend in real life.
Yeah,
he's only battled me like twice. So
yeah, and I've only lost twice.
Yeah, and you battled my wife and lost as well.
And I also lost to I didn't lose to Kayla's Capsule. She beat my friend though. Anyways, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I forgot what we were up to.
Yeah, we were talking about the snow and the sand. I think to say your point about how you wish the snow did chip, I think what they should do with snow is do what they did with sand, where like sand gives the boost to rock, but still steel and ground don't get the chip. They should pick like 2 types that don't take damage from snow other than ice, like water and
I agree.
Steel.
Yeah, so steel was the first one that came to mind for me as well. But yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate things where, like, snow and sand are in this really awkward spot where they're just not as good at like pairing with other mons as, you know, Sun and Rain are. Like, because when you think about, you know, what Sun and Rain do, right? Sun boost up fire type moves and Rain buffs up water type moves, right? So right now we have Kyogre and Urshifu and Rain dealing a lot of damage, right? And then in the Sun, obviously you've got the Paradox Pokemon all getting boosts. Both Groudon and Koraidon both like running Terra Fire with like Heat Crash or, you know, Flare Blitz. So that's all like really, really good. But then it's like in snow, it's like, you get Blizzard Spam and you get Aurora Veil, right? And then in sand, it's like you get like Excadrill, like in Lycanroc. Like it's those 2 weathers are pretty underpowered as it is. So yeah, I think losing the chip, it's just one of those things where like I feel like it should have at least got the chip. So
yeah, it doesn't help too that like I feel like they diversified Rain and Sun a little bit more. Like there are non-water type moves and non-fire type moves that benefit from Rain or benefit from Sun. Yeah. Like you have Electro Shot, Hurricane, Thunder,
Solar Beam.
Then Solar Beam for but then with Ice or Snow, it's just the only thing that's benefiting from it is Blizzard and Aurora Veil.
Yeah, and I don't think Sand even gets a move that's benefited. Like they get technically they do get like decent I mean, look, they've got decent Sand Rush users, and then there's like some Sand Force, but like any
Sand
mon
Cloak
that has
too with Garchomp.
Yeah, actually, Garchomp with Bright Powder did run that for a bit, but like realistically, they're all pretty cope. It's like they'd all prefer just their other abilities. Like Garchomp probably just wants to like Rough Skin,
right?
You know, Hippowdon probably just wants to set the sand. Gastrodon probably just wants Storm Drain. Like a lot of the mods that actually have abilities in sand are just like, I think my other ability is probably just better anyway.
Sand honestly has always been dominant. I wonder why Sunny Day, is that what it's called? I wonder why that doesn't give a stat boost to like fire types or grass types or something.
It does.
It gives a boost to fire type moves.
To fire type moves, but not to like the actual Pokemon stats.
No.
Right.
Just fire type attacks.
I feel like that is why
it does so to the good. Paradoxes, if that helps.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, nothing better than a special attack boost to Flutter, man.
Do you think there's any? I honestly loved when they introduced in Gen 7 the terrains. That felt like a long time coming. It felt like an alternative, an addition to the weathers. Would you add any additional weathers or
it's cool too
because
you can do both rain and terrain.
Exactly.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Would I add anything else? Probably not. I think just buffing the lesser ones would probably be the best way to do it. Like when you look at weather, as we said, I don't think snow and sand are inherently bad. It's their partners aren't good. Like, really what I think we need is restricted legendaries that use those weathers, because we're at a stage now where we have 2 sun setting restricteds and 1 rain setting restricted. And like, we have T-Tar, which is great for sand. But T-Tar, again, doesn't have friends to play with. Like, maybe we just need like a really good rock type in sand. Maybe that's all T-Tar needs.
Yeah, that was another big event where you know, like when Pelipper got a hidden ability of what is it called?
Drizzle
to set up.
Torkoal got Drought. They gave one to each one. They gave Torkoal Drought, Pelipper Drizzle, Gigalith Sandstream, and Vanillux Snow Warning.
Huge win for Vanillux.
That was awesome.
But I feel like they could definitely give those out to more Pokemon. I don't know.
I don't think they're going to change it, because right now we have 2 weather setters for each type outside of restricteds, and same with the terrains. But yeah, I think terrain it shows one of the biggest issues we have with that mechanic in particular, because if you look at like all of Generation 9, for example, right, you've got Rillaboom, who's obviously really good, but he came halfway through the first year. But then it was like Indeedee with Psychic Terrain was really good, but then no one played the other 2 weathers. Like, you didn't play Pincurchin for Electric Terrain, which was like really sad, because it's just a bad mon. Like, it's not good. And then you look at Rillaboom, who, regardless of its weather, is one of the best Pokemon. Sorry, if it's terrain, it's one of the best ones in the game. It's really hard, very bulky.
They definitely try to give those great abilities to bad Pokemon. I mean, So it's kind of
I
like a
love
trade-off.
that with Rillaboom, they literally
Except for
nerfed
Rillaboom.
Grassy Glide twice. They literally did it. They nerfed it when Scarlet and Violet came out, and then they nerfed it again when Teal Mask came out as kind of like it's still too broken. And then Rillaboom, like, I mean, it hurt it a little, but Rillaboom still doesn't care. It's still like a dominant mon. And
it honestly doesn't need it to thrive, and especially with like Miraidon now coming out of nowhere last weekend. Now people are starting to realize, oh, you need it, unlike every team. Because, like, again, I don't know how much you watched Indianapolis, Lumi, but we saw a Miraidon. Yeah, we watched it one-shot a Rillaboom on day 2 in grassy terrain, I think it was. And it's like, oh, this mon's kind of stupid. Terra Electric Helping Hand Electro Drift, just one-shot a resist with an Assault Vest.
Yeah, that was the thing, too, was Aaron Trailer was running a Miraidon. And the thing about Aaron Trailer is every time Aaron Trailer is on, my wife will be watching that tournament until Aaron Trailer's out, because he was the person who basically kicked her out of the tournament that she did in Charlotte. So she now gets a kick out of the fact that, like, she was defeated by and lost her chance at day 2 by one of the most, prominent people in at least Western, VGC. And so anytime Aaron Trailer's on screen, she's watching him. He made top 8 in Indianapolis, awesome. And she was like, I lost to him.
That's good. You want to be beat by someone who's great.
That's like me. So a little backstory. My first event was February last year, and I was 6-2 going into the final round. And that's where I met Joseph Ugarte, Joe UX9, who is a multiple-time regional champion winner. And he beat me in game 3. Very, very close. I burnt his King Gambit, but then I special attack dropped it, so he got +2 attack. He beat me in a very, very close series. And then after he beat me, he went on to win like 3 regionals. So I was like, not the worst person to lose to, I guess. Yeah, he's a pretty good player.
Not bad at all. Yeah, no. It's cool to, like, that was the coolest thing about doing VGC, because for those who don't know, my first time doing VGC was this year. It was literally, my first tournament was end of January. It was Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was such a cool thing, was just like going there and seeing these people, but not only like, the people that you watch on the streams, but not only that, but also like kind of feeling good about yourself, because like Sarah got paired up against Aaron Trailer, and like for me at one point I had lost 2 matches, so I'm like, wow, I'm doing really, really bad right now. But then who am I sitting next to? Jody. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing as good as Jody. So I mean.
Yeah, it's crazy too, and like the events are a lot of fun as well. Like I've been to 4 events now, so I did one last season, 3 this season, and they're just good fun, and it's also a great excuse to like travel. Like for example, I went to Perth, like a month ago now. It's my first time ever leaving the east coast of Australia. I just went over there for a weekend. I had a pretty poor result, but I didn't go in expecting to do great. I did like 0 prep leading up to the event. But my friend Luke, who I was like staying with, we shared a hotel. He got top 8, so that was like really cool. He had a really good event, and I basically just got to cheer him on day 2. So it was nice and fun.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question regarding Legends ZA. I think this is kind of a big question in the community, at least what I care about. But it's a 2-part question. So first off, do you think that we are going to get new Mega Evolutions in Legends ZA?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
100. So we can't not.
Why would they tease it without delivering on the promise?
Right.
It would make no sense to me, because like at least with Generation 7, I don't think we got any new Megas, but Megas wasn't the.
But they didn't promote it. Focus. It was a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it was like, okay, we got Z moves here. And then it's like, and you can have Megas as well, yeah. But this time they're like, oh no, first trailer, Megas are here.
Yeah, dude, it's
like,
gonna be.
And even they gave it its own dedicated spot. When like we saw a Mega
true.
Band at some point in the trailer, it was the trailer ends, and it's the marveling.
I was gonna say
scene,
it's like a
right?
Marvel thing. It's like and just before you
like where you're like, oh, that's Nick Fury. He's assembling the Avengers. Instead, we're going, oh, that's Mega Evolution. But so then my follow-up question would be, if we're seeing new, because with Legends Arceus introduced a bunch of new Pokemon and new regional variants, like Ursaluna, Hisuian, and Samurai. And the thing was, like we talked about, Legends Arceus did not have a player versus player. It didn't have its own competitive bracket. And so something that you noticed with Scarlet and Violet was the second home dropped all of those new Pokemon or new forms in Legends Arceus were available to be transferred in via home. So my thing is, if they're going to introduce new Mega Evolution, so if they're going to go, okay, Dusty, here's your Mega Go-Goat. They've gotta, in Gen 10, let me use Mega Go-Goat in, like, the competitive... so will Megas come into Gen 10, is what I'm saying.
I want them. I want them bad. Like, to me, it's like I didn't get to play with Mega Salamence in Generation 6 and 7 because I didn't play VGC. I played singles back then, and it was like just banned to Ubers like straight away.
Yeah.
Because that all I want to do, I would just like Salamence is like one of my 3 favorite Pokemon. I want to be able to play Mega Salamence. Like it, especially in VGC, it seems like I get it, right? It's a jack of all trades. It does everything. Comes in with Intimidate. It's really bulky. It's fast with Tailwind. Like a stab Hyper Voice because of like its ability is like insane. Like a spread flying type move that doesn't miss is like nutty. You look at every flying type move has got a drawback, except for this.
Yeah, it's funny though. Actually, I mean, this is kind of against the point, but like Legends Arceus doesn't have abilities, right? Legends Arceus doesn't have. Didn't have hell items, right?
I saw I want to shout out I don't even know if he watches Hidden Power. I know he watches my channel. I don't know if he watches our podcast though, but it's a guy named Evan. I battle him pretty regularly in singles. But Evan posted, I just saw one of his posts. I don't remember if it was under something I posted or what, but he said the thing about the abilities is that specifically Mega Kangaskhan. Mega Kangaskhan's ability is so much a part of Mega Kangaskhan that they can't not do abilities, right?
But like, they didn't do abilities in Let's Go.
They didn't, but
that was a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, and that
I don't count that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just and again with that one, Megas was like that was in the background, right?
Sure.
It wasn't necessarily. It was an accessory to the game. They did promote it, but it wasn't.
It wasn't all of them. It was just the Kanto.
It wasn't Kalos with Megas, right? Yeah. It wasn't Kalos, the home of Mega Evolution. But I don't know. I feel like, and that's the thing too. We sit here and we'll say, oh well, Legends Arceus didn't have this. Well, Legends Arceus did this and that. But like Legends Arceus was one game, so we can't form a pattern based off of it.
Yeah, I would also say too. I think that was just them dipping their toes in, right? Like, I would expect a lot of changes. That's why I think we could honestly, like, I see a world where we play VGC on PLZA next year.
Simply which is because insane.
Because I just see a world where they're like, the rumors I've seen is like people saying they've been developing this since like before Pokemon Legends Arceus dropped. And if that's the case, then it's like, great, right?
Oh, before it dropped. Yeah.
So like they had that game and they started working on the next one. So you don't know how long it's been in the oven for.
That's true.
That's true.
So if it's been in there for 4 years, who knows? Like maybe there is a world where we actually do just, that's our new VGC game for the next 2 years.
That's really interesting.
I think I buy that. I buy that theory because I have always told people that in Legends Arceus, there is I forget the names of the areas, I'm sorry, but in the snowy area, there is a rock by a waterfall that looks exactly like a Mega Gardevoir. And to further hammer home that point, you find an Alpha Gardevoir right in front of that rock. And I've always told people, like, this is weird. This is weird to me. I said that from day one. I never thought, I'm not trying to give myself too much credit. I never thought, oh, Kalos is next. I didn't think that. But I was like, why are they doing this? They are clearly going, Mega Gardevoir.
They're hinting at something.
That's possible. Yeah. I think
so. It may have been them hinting at their next game.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
interesting.
going back to what I. So you go.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. So I feel like a common theory, maybe not common, but what I've heard before, and it kind of makes sense. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was like one of the first like experimental games that they put out, and obviously it is a different engine than Legends Arceus. But I could see them being like, let's not put all of our eggs in the same basket, but we're excited and we love and we're passionate about what Legends Arceus was. And maybe what they did was they built up what we now know to be Legends ZA, and they were building that game in the background. And because Legends Arceus had such I don't know if it had critical acclaim, but I feel like it had a really warm reception. They decided to continue forward.
So many people back into Pokemon that I had seen who had kind of dropped the franchise with Sword and Shield, and they got roped right back in with Legends.
It's one of those things where it's like people love it, but maybe it's still only sold, or it's sold worse than BDSP, which is weird. So I guess that was just the hesitation there in my voice. But I guess what I'm trying to think of is Legends ZA could really be a much different engine, but branded the same as Legends Arceus, because we really don't know what the gameplay looks like at all. We have zero gameplay of Legends ZA to go off of. So that really could indicate. I mean, who knows? In a couple months when we get a gameplay trailer, this game could look a lot more like a blend of Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, right? This could actually look closer to Generation 10 than maybe we're expecting.
And I think as well, it's probably being developed for a different Switch, right? It's the hardware is going to be different. Yeah. The Switch 2 will be a more powerful machine, and you would assume that they're building it for that, and then they're just going to port it back to Switch, right? So it's going to be really curious to see what they do with it, because again, I think there's a lot of potential there. I just, I've got a lot of, hopium. I just pray. I pray they don't. I pray they don't just don't butcher it. Give me some of what I want. It doesn't have to be everything, but yeah, I've got very high expectations for this game. So
something I've always thought was interesting about you, Scott, is that you are a fan of Mega Evolution, and I feel like maybe I'm running in the wrong circles, but I feel like most VGC players actually hate it. I've seen Wolf make so many comments about ugh, Mega Evolution.
I think for me, it's because I didn't play back then, right? And
yeah,
I guess for me as well, I'm not someone who complains about the tools we have in the game. I just this is what we have available. Let's do it, right? Where I see people on Twitter every new format. It's this is the worst format of 2020 of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and then people will pull up tweets and it's you've said that every single format.
Yeah.
Right.
It's whatever the new meta is, it's going to be disruptive, right? Whatever the new gimmick is or whatever.
Exactly. Well, and it takes time to learn as well. That's the other big thing. You need time to develop a format. Bolt balance, the Japanese balance, which we saw for the second half of Regulation F, it took 2 months before people caught on and realized, hey, Raging Bolt with double fake out is just broken.
Yeah, that's so true. There really are. The great thing about VGC is the metagame bubbles up and things rise to the top. But they're really, you can get away with anything. If you find the right strat, there could be, the perfect strat, the perfect Pokemon that exists, but just no one has discovered it yet, right? Yeah, that was always the fun that I had. Set. What is it?
I was playing Trico for a bit.
Oh, dude. So you, Endeavor?
So you have Endeavor Focus Sash, but you upper hand your Weakness Policy Dragonite with Terra Normal. So you upper hand it, and it can't flinch because it's inner focus. So then you just get a +2 Terra Normal E-Speed and start one-shotting things. And then they drop you to your Sash, and then you Endeavor Quick Attack them. It's great.
That's great.
Yeah, it's
that
very
is so fun. I love that.
It's actually
Trico,
it's
not even Septile.
I love that so much. Cool. Trico's great.
No. Well, you go Trico because it has less HP and less damage. Because you want to get dropped to your Sash always. Because I think some Tricos don't even, if you're up against Speed Boost or Flooddy, you don't even go down to your Sash.
How much HP does it have at level 100? Or is it level 50?
We play level 50. It's I think it's right around 100 if you go 0 IVs, which is great, because even when I played against things like Farigiraf, they just sit in front of you and they're oh yeah, you can't quick attack E-Speed me, but then you just Endeavor them and do 60% of their health on turn 1. It's really funny. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I guess that's a good segue. That is one thing I really like is with VGC, you will occasionally just see the most random Pokemon pop off. Like you mentioned earlier, Articuno winning a regionals, when Articuno has it is usually a Pokemon that I see people point at and laugh at. I remember Patrick, you probably remember his last name, but a guy named Patrick brought it to Worlds, and it was such a big deal.
Yes, last year I remember that. Yeah.
But it won a regionals, and right now something that's kind of taking people is people are using Dugong and Gloom, not Vileplume. Dugong and Gloom.
and I asked Lumi for an explanation for this, and he refused to tell me anything about it. He wanted a raw reaction. I gotta get to the bottom of this. Why Gloom?
Explain it like he's a baby, Scott.
Why not Oddish?
Okay, so one, it has a Violite, so a Violite doubles, or I think it's 1.5 times is the defensive stats, right? So you want it on Gloom and not Oddish, because just Gloom is just naturally bulkier. But it's really just the support kit it has. Like I've got it open on the side here. So it has Pollen Puff, which so if you don't know, if you use that on an ally, it restores 50% of their health.
Okay.
So very, very good when you're pairing it up with things like Lunala, which I have actually dropped the team in the chat as well, if you wanted to pull that up, Dusty, for the people to look at it. But yeah, so you have Lunala, whose like ability activates when it has full HP. So being able to heal it back to full is really good. It's also paired up with Tinglu as well, which getting the HP restored. But yeah, its job is essentially just to sit there, and then just click things like Strength Sap, Teeter Dance, Sleep Powder, and Pollen Puff, and just be really, really annoying. So that's kind of I guess.
And it's just better because, or did I miss it? Is it better just because it has a Violite?
Yeah, better because of the Violite.
I love
technically
that,
with the Violite, it's just bulkier than Vileplume.
I love that.
And Blossom, but yeah.
Well, and does Vileplume even get Stench?
Probably
I think
not.
it changes to something when it evolves into Vileplume. I could be wrong on that. But because I didn't even know this until I saw someone talking about this team. Because back in my day, Stench only made it where wild Pokemon were less common.
Yeah.
But now Stench actually
it was
raises the chance to flinch,
which is pretty good. Yeah. So it gets it'll Vileplume if it'll end up with Chlorophyll or Effect Spore.
Yeah. Okay. So they both have Chlorophyll, but yeah. But no, it's a really interesting piece. It's also the same type as Amoonguss, which is one of the best defensive switches in the game.
Sure.
And it gets Strength Sap as well, which Amoonguss doesn't. Honestly, the only thing this mod is missing is probably just Rage Powder. But I mean, it's one of those closed team sheet texts where it's got the Sleep Powder, it's got the Teeter Dance, it's got Strength Sap. Most high-level VGC players, you roll up into a game, you see this, you've got no idea what it's going to do. I could not have told you what Gloom did before seeing the paste here. So yeah, there's that, and then of course Dugong's also on the team, which is super interesting. I saw
the thick fat ability is pretty good.
Well, if you want to scroll down just a little bit so you can see it's set. Yeah. So you see that beautiful set there, right? So it has Fake Out, which apparently a lot of top players had no idea this one had Fake Out.
Yeah.
And then it also has Quick Claw Horn Drill. And I was watching, I think,
interesting. Horn Drill.
Yeah. So I was watching Sempra play the team. And they were just Quick Claw procking and then Horn Drilling and just one-shotting. I watched them one-shot a Lunala, I think it was. And if you look at this team, it has no way really through Lunala
Wouldn't Lunala be immune to it?
Horn Drill? Oh,
isn't
I got the
Yeah, is it?
You're right. It might have been Terra Fairy. Unless
sure,
it's just a different mon. But it took out a restriction.
Its Terra type is normal. Okay.
There was someone else's Lunala, not our own.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's that. That's obviously gimmicky with the team, right? But then it also has Aqua Jet to proc your Armarouge, which has weak armor weakness policy. And yeah, it's a very gimmicky team. I can't believe how high ladder it got, but it was also incredibly successful. I saw a lot of very high level VGC players posting about this team saying I just got cooked by Dugong.
Palchua lost to it. That was how I first saw it. Was people were oh my gosh, Palchua just lost to a Gloom and Dugong.
This is the stuff that I love about not VGC. I never played VGC, but when I played competitive 6v6 on Showdown or just on my 3DS, this is the stuff I was always looking for. I'd search Cerebi. I'd organize all the Pokemon by their HP or by their defense or whatever it might be, right? I'd find the Pokemon with the best attack, and then I'd go through the top 20 to find whatever move I might need or whatever ability I might need, and then I'd create something super creative.
Yeah.
And this is inspiring. I love this. Dugong.
Yeah. I think that's one of the cool things with VG as well. Obviously there's fun things you can do in single battles. But really, you can't do the side Aqua Jet until weak armor weakness policy Armarouge in singles. So there's just a lot of cool gimmicks like that. I don't know if I said it here if it was before the pod, but back in Series B and C of last year, people were going flip turn Iron Bundle into their Armarouge. It's you'd be the fastest thing on the board. You'd flip turn it, activate weakness policy, activate weak armor, and then get your Indeedee in for free, and then you just fire off a massive expanding force in terrain. Yeah, so there's just a lot of cool things like that you can do.
I saw another version of the team where they gave Gloom a loaded dice and gave it Bullet Seed. And so what that does for listeners is that since it has Stench, which makes it where its moves will have a chance to make the opponent flinch, Bullet Seed with the loaded dice is going to hit 4 or 5 times. So it has 4 or 5. It's a reroll each hit. So it's 4 or 5 chances to make the opponent flinch every time you use ability.
I think the math is something like 43% as well. That might be on 5 hits. But I mean, having just like a 40-odd% chance to just flinch your opponent is kind of funny, right? Like,
that's better than landing a sheer cold, you know? I mean,
I think you'd take the KO.
I mean, yeah.
Sorry, you mean the odds? You mean the odds?
Yeah, no, I mean the odds of like getting the flinch are better than landing a. I mean, that's
like
just insane to me.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we've seen it with things like Minchino in the past, right, where they would run King's Rock with like their skill link ability.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just it's cool stuff, man. And there's like, I mean, as a player, there's nothing worse than when you just get like flinched down by it, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're the one clicking the button, oh, it's great. It's
like that's super fun. Yeah.
It's only bad if it happens to me, not if it happens because of me. Like I saw someone this was a couple regionals ago. It might have even been at EUIC, but someone actually had their golden go like turn 1. It got frozen from a blizzard, and it stayed frozen for the rest of the match. It never thawed.
Oh,
and
that's so bad.
They lost.
You fly all the way out to the
golden go not
tournament.
Frozen. They had that match, but
that's
because
awesome.
It happens all the time. It's so it's one of the worst mechanics in the game. Like
frozen.
It's so it's so uncompetitive. Like. Because again, I've had games myself where I was just frozen for 7 turns. Like,
what's the difference
like
between that and sleep then?
Sleep guaranteed wake up. Is it 3 turns?
So the way sleep works is the first turn you will always sleep, which is why sleep is so good on Pokemon like Amoonguss, for example, because Amoonguss tends to always go last, which means the next turn the opponent can't move, right? Okay. So you'll get that one turn that's guaranteed, and then after that, it's like a 33% chance that you'll wake up on the first turn. If you don't hit that, there's a 50% chance you wake up on the second turn. If you don't hit that, you're guaranteed to wake up on that last turn.
Oh, okay.
Which personally, I'm still not a fan of.
Yeah, back in the day, I'm pretty sure you could be asleep for like 5 turns. Okay.
I think it was 6, but I don't know how long ago that was. But that's one thing I personally wish they'd change. Yeah.
So that's sleep, and then frozen is explain frozen.
Unlimited
forever.
It is just there is a chance. I don't know what the chance is.
Is that supposed to be the buff or like the value of an ice type? Like, do they keep making bad ice Pokemon because that's so good? Is that the trade-off that Game Freak is thinking
there are ways around freeze though. That's the issue. Like, so for example, if you most fire type moves will just unthaw you. So like if you like, for example, if you like freeze a Crydon, they can just flare blitz and it will thaw them.
Okay. It's a 20% chance to thaw each turn. But like with sleep, like you said, you know, sleep it stacks each turn. Like if it's 33% the first turn,
and it's 50, and then it's 100.
50. But like with sleep, it's 20%. The next turn, it's 20%. The next turn, it's 20%. You know.
Yeah, and it never gets better. And again, sleep's one of those mechanics. In my opinion, it's like I wish they would just balance it. Take the first and the last turn off, and let's just make it 2 always, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't... Because as a player, there's nothing worse than when you play against someone with Amoonguss, and they first turn wake, and I get the full 3 turns. It's just game losing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, they say, you know, your opponent gets a good sleep, but you also get a sleep, but then they wake up, you don't. It's just like, I just lost the game because they hit the roll I didn't, right? And for me, I like when they remove some of the RNG aspect to the game, because while it adds variance, it's uncompetitive at times, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, I literally lost a local tournament. I think I was like top 8 because their Amoonguss, well, they just woke up first turn twice, and my Mons got the full sleep twice.
Yeah, that's definitely.
So it's like we were playing Amoonguss Mirrors, and he just kept waking up, and I didn't. And it's like,
I mean, I get what you're saying. That RNG is definitely valuable in the scene, right? I think that.
Oh yeah,
I think that does add a lot.
Right. It's to the extent, right? Like when my opponent flinches me once, I'm not like feeling horrible. But if my opponent gets the freeze and I am frozen 7 turns,
that's just
gonna be a little upset.
You're not even gonna be alive for 7 turns. So they're either gonna set up and then sweep, or they're just gonna kill you.
That's the thing is they might leave you that way, right? Like and with the thing I was talking about earlier with the guy with the golden go who got frozen, the thing is, he could thaw it if he used a fire move on it, but it's a golden go. It is a steel type golden go. So if you use a fire move on it, it's dead.
Yeah.
Now, if like my water type Primarina got frozen, I would be tempted to side flamethrower to let it on thaw.
Sure.
But nah.
It's still that's super frustrating. Hey, so let's bring it back to what Lumi asked earlier, right? When we're talking about Mega Evolution. And then how that could potentially work in Generation 10. I think another variable, maybe part of the discussion we can have is, you know, going into Generation 10, we can only expect another battle gimmick, what kind of battle gimmick do you think we could see? I think there's three scenarios. Either megas continue, we get a new gimmick, or maybe everything returns.
So
Everything.
I think there'll be something new regardless. Even if we get megas, potentially Z moves, I'm sure there'll be something. And what I've wanted for a very long time is synergy moves, because I think it's a perfect way to remove RNG from the game.
Yeah.
Especially too because I'll explain it a little bit in a second. But we're in a meta game right now where, for example, Scald, right? Scald is just a 30% chance to burn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's to me, Scald can be very uncompetitive. Obviously, there's a reason, everything just lost Scald in this generation because everything had Scald before and it was just stupid, right? Especially in singles, something switching into a Scald and, 1/3 of the time it's just getting burnt, right?
Toxic was the same way.
Yeah, it's not balanced, right? It is a very stupid move, and I'm glad they stripped it from a lot of mons. But the way I see it, and especially too, because if you have a look at the DLCs, right, how I forget exactly which one came last. I think it was the Indigo Disc, but the entire DLC was double battles, right? Yeah. So I could see a world where eventually a main series game is actually just double battles, because I think one, it's a fantastic way to actually promote VGC, because there are so many people to this day
that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I've got friends that had no idea what VGC actually was. They had no idea double battles was a thing until I started.
I had you explain it in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know.
A lot of people don't realize, especially casual players are oh yeah, I've heard of Pokemon Showdown. You play OU there. It's actually the official competitive scene is double battles. But yeah, it's one thing I've always said is if you click Scald next to a fire type, it will always burn. If you don't, it just never burns, right? That's just a very basic example of that, right?
Yeah, but how do you market that, right? I think that's another aspect. A lot of the gimmicks that we've seen are flashy and they're easily identifiable, whether it's a glass crown on your head, or if it's a dance that you do before an attack, right?
I think you could do cool animations. Say for example, obviously Skull and Violet have been roasted for their poor attack animations, especially compared to Sword and Shield. Yeah, because if you go back and have a look at things like Behemoth Blade in Generation 8, and then you look at Behemoth Blade in Generation 9, it's
it's insulting.
It's it looks so cool, the animation in Sword and Shield, and it's they really just kind of butchered it, I guess. So maybe you click Skull and it's this, whatever Generation 9 animation you have now. But then, I don't know, you click Skull next to your Charizard, and then all of a sudden it's just extra hot boiling egg. I don't know, something like that.
You see Charizard get involved with the attack too, maybe somehow?
So I think
he's
some
doing
form of synergy move would be really cool. Yeah, it's like Goku behind Gohan. But yeah, I think something like that would be really cool. But outside of that, I'm not really sure what else they could do, right? Maybe fusions. I know that's something that's been thrown around for ages.
I think, fusions though, I think would only function really it's a different version of a mega. That's how I see
exactly,
it.
Right?
People
spoke about Amulet
well, in a way, they've kind of already done that. If you think about it, more so than Calyrex or more so than Kyurem, as a gimmick, Dondozo and Tatsugiri is what a fusion probably would look like.
Yeah. I mean, but that's synergy. It's also synergy.
Yeah.
Because it's not really a fusion. It's not really a fusion because they're not combining into one. So, okay, I got a couple ideas. And I really want to look at this also through the lens of what do you think the competitive scene could benefit from, right? So, I don't know what you want to call these, but the two things that I think could be really cool, right? And again, I'm looking back at what Game Freak has done before with these battle gimmicks. Z moves was obviously about the actual Pokemon move. Dynamax was size, but then also, I think appropriately focused on HP, really. And then we obviously had Terastallization, which focuses on the typing. So I think, and Mega kind of focuses on everything. Mega's kind of an amalgamation of everything. But I think it'd be really cool to see a battle gimmick that focuses either on the stat distribution, which also maybe covers or is covered in Megas. But then also I think it'd be really cool to see, what are they called? Maybe, what was it going to be, abilities? I think abilities would be really cool. So
yeah, what
do you mean as in
ability?
So my idea,
extra ability or?
Yeah, maybe an extra ability. So my idea is we'll call it armor evolution or armor forms. And then basically like every Pokemon, kind of like a Mega, can be equipped with maybe like one of 6 armors. So like if you have the helmet armor, now your Pokemon gets specifically like an HP boost or something, right? Or actually, I guess we already talked about typing. I was gonna say maybe this could be effective.
But in a way, like they already have that kind of with like Assault Vest, even though it's got a kick to it. Assault Vest boosts special defense, Choice Band boosts attack.
I guess I'm not thinking of it like as an actual item, but you're right. It probably would make sense mechanically to function like an item.
The thing I've always thought of is like kind of honestly like a mixture of what both of you are saying, combo moves and fusion, is like where say you have a Gardevoir and a Gallade, and it has to be Gardevoir and Gallade. And if I click a fighting move with Gallade and a fairy move with Gardevoir, it becomes, let's say I click Close Combat, which is a base 120 move, and Moonblast, which is a base 95 move. Added together, that would be 315?
205, isn't it?
Or yeah. Holy crap. I did very bad math.
215, right, yeah.
215.
Yeah.
I add an extra 100. But like maybe what they do is they go, okay, well, since added together, this would be 215. Instead, we're going to say, because Gardevoir and Gallade, they're going to synchronize. And they will use that move where it will be 250, hit both targets, and have a chance to do this. You know, like
something like that would
make
be
it
cool,
specific Pokemon. So it's not like any fairy and any fighting move from any Pokemon could work. It has to be Gardevoir and Gallade.
Or maybe it could work. Maybe any sort of fairy and fighting move could synchronize, but it's not as powerful as as Gallade and Gardevoir. And then Gallade
kind of like
and
a
Gardevoir,
max move. How like max moves were every Pokemon could use them, but then some Pokemon had the G max moves that had an effect that was exclusive to them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems similar to what Dusty had up before with the pledge moves, right? Where like they're really cool as well. Like because I don't know if people understand how they function.
Do you want to explain?
Normally, I mean, I can. I don't even know how they all function properly myself.
I mean, they're not used much.
Yeah, so essentially, like, for example, if you have a look at that first one there, so we see how we got Charizard and Polion and Sceptile on the board. Sceptile's the fastest. It will go first and click the Grass Pledge. And then the cool thing with that is the second the Grass Pledge goes off, if the other ally has clicked the Water Pledge or the Fire Pledge, it then just instantly gets to go, and then you attack on that same turn. So that's another really cool thing as well you can do with moves like that is where, you know, say you've got some really fast Pokemon, I don't know, for the example, Calyrex Shadow Rider, it clicks, you know, some move, and then it's like, oh, my really slow Calyrex Ice Rider next to it just gets to move, you know, right now, for example, something like that.
Yeah, my only pushback on this would be like, again, how would they market this? And could this be something that the regular player could utilize in a playthrough of your game? Right, because you can interact with Tera Stellar and Gigantamax, etc. You can interact with that.
Work in an all doubles game, like Scott was talking.
Yeah,
about.
You're right. Yeah,
give me some Colosseums.
That's what it would have to be.
You know, then we're talking. But
yeah,
but honestly, like I don't know if you guys have played Temtem. I played a lot of that prior to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah,
and that whole game was double battles, and to me it was fantastic. Like that was a really fun game. Like, you know, going through it and playing the whole game in double battles.
Yeah,
like it just adds a whole nother layer to it. You can also, like with double battles as well, you can make gym leaders, you know, much more difficult as well. And that's where they probably have to look at potential like difficulty options. But like, for example, you go up against a rock type gym, you just give them a Sandstream Bond, right? It's just like, oh, they've got, you know, T-Tar or something. Yeah. And then they've got a team built around the sand. And again, in doubles, it's a lot scarier to deal with a sand team than in like singles, right? Because, you know, if they got to lead their T-Tar with nothing next to it, it becomes a lot more manageable. But like if they've got a T-Tar next to an Excadrill on lead, then it's like, oh crap, that's scary.
Yeah. If you're enjoying this episode, please consider supporting Hidden Power on Patreon or YouTube channel members. Right now we have 4 tiers and the lowest membership starts at just $5 a month. Supporters get access to our secret Discord server and help control the direction of the podcast. Supporters also get access to our archive of bonus episodes.
Okay, so our Discord honestly is popping. We have other creators in there too, which is kind of fun. It ain't just the 3 of us. We're discussing leaks when they drop. We talk about news. We'll be talking about how SoulSilverArt has, you know, just garbage takes.
It's so much fun.
It's a place for us to connect.
I'm in there every day. Also, we have revamped our merch store. So proud of every product that is in this store now. We have stickers, t-shirts, mugs, ball caps, right? The dad caps, these ball caps are embroidered. Look at this. It's literally an embroidered.
So clean.
You cannot get anything more high quality than that.
I just got news. Do y'all hear that? Solbasaur says that he even has his own merch.
I'll talk for him. It's beautiful. Very cool designs. You guys should
Very
check it out.
Japanese style.
Even the front of the shirt has a unique logo.
I'm getting one for sure.
If you're invested in this show, invest in the show. Thank you so much for watching, and now back to the video.
I actually do want to ask you, because like there's some Pokemon that like, you know, are threats because of the gimmick. You know what I mean? Like I
like
can't.
Tera, yeah.
Right, and like, you know, obviously Lucario is a bit more threatening with a Lucario Knight than it is without one. What do you think are some of the? Because then there's some Pokemon like Landorus, Therian, Incineroar, and now Rillaboom are like Pokemon that have proven the gimmick doesn't matter. We are staples. Yeah. What are some of the Gen 9 Pokemon that you think it doesn't matter the gimmick that's in play? This Pokemon is now a staple of VGC.
So number one's obviously Fluttermane. Its typing is like insane. Like Ghost Fairy is already just nutty as it is, right? And then on top of that, you factor in that it's a fairy type. It's in a metagame where like there are other good fairy types in Pokemon, but this is the best one. Like without the Tapus, there really isn't any non-restricted fairy that even comes close to it. Like maybe Togekiss in the right metagame's good, but realistically Togekiss isn't Fluttermane. So I think Fluttermane, it doesn't matter the game, it will always be good. Unless it loses like Moonblast, that one's going to be busted. What else? I mean, the Ruinous Quartet are all really good, except for like Wo-Chen. Like not Ting-Lu. I mean, Ting-Lu's like probably always going to be solid, but Chen Pao is just inherently broken. A lot of VGC metagames will always lean towards being physically offensive, it's one of those crazy things. You talk about things like Incineroar, like running around with Intimidate being super annoying, and it's like, it doesn't matter. People still opt for physical attackers over special attackers. Chi-Yu, obviously, is my favorite Pokemon in VGC. That is, as long as it's in the game, special attackers will always thrive. Again, their abilities are just inherently broken, right? Like the ability to just increase or lower, you know, certain stats essentially is just also, they all decrease stats of everyone on the board.
How do their abilities work? It's like Intimidate, but like when you send them out, it lowers
so it just,
specific
it lowers it lowers the stat for a certain thing. So for example, Chi-Yu just lowers everyone's special attack by special defense by 25, except for itself. So it affects your allies too. But yeah, so that's why I don't know if you guys have ever like seen Jody Azarelli's you know, Chi-Yu calcs he does on stream or anything like that. But like there's a world where like Chi-Yus can just one shot Incineroars with overheat, for example. It's just like helping hand Chi-Yu in this. Yeah, it's just like Chi-Yu in the sun with Helping Hand can just like overheat one-shot Incins. I think you may need like Terra Fire to do it, but their abilities are broken, right? It's why we've seen things like Chen Pao D-Knight, because Chen Pao lowers the defense stat by 25%, and then Dragonite just clicks Terra Anomaly Speed with Choice Band, and just it one-shots everything. Like,
well,
especially, I was gonna say, prior to this game.
An important thing to like point out about these versus Intimidate is Intimidate lowers the stat, so I can switch the Pokemon out and it'll you know, reset it. But these just do it on the field. It's not like lowering the stat the same way Intimidate is, so you can't avoid it. Yeah,
and like you go back to like what I was saying about Fluttermane being broken as well. You get things like, you know, Fluttermane and Chi-Yu, which are just Fluttermane's like one of the fastest Pokemon in the metagame. It's one of the strongest special attackers in the metagame. Then all of a sudden you're just clicking Choice Specs, Terra Fairy, Moonblast next to a Chi-Yu, and like you're not living it, and then again, same thing with like D-Knight plus Chen Pao, right? And there's other broken combos like that as well. We saw Dragapult obviously got used with Chen Pao a lot in the early metagame as well. But I guess talking about other, so what you wanted, was it Gen 9 Mons in particular?
Yeah, I said specifically Gen 9.
What else?
What about Blood Moon or Saluna?
Yeah.
That's actually Gen 8, but yeah.
Blood Moon.
Blood Moon's not though.
Is, in my opinion, the best ground type in the game right now. And I think it will probably stay that way for the rest of the generation. It is. Like, the way I look at the Ursalunas is they really feel like semi-restricted Pokemon. They're that well statted.
Wow.
Like we're especially right now with Ring G. It's like 550. But it's the way its stats are distributed, right? It's got like 135 special attack. Its defense and HP are really solid. Its speed stat is low, but it's fine because it's a Trick Room user. So, like, really, its biggest like downfall is its special defense stat. But again, a lot of the time people are running 4 to 5, physical attackers anyway. Normally you'll have like at least one big special attacker on the team. But with Blood Moon Ursaluna, it's like, if you remove the Flutter Mane or, Golden Go, whatever it might be, all of a sudden it has a pretty free game. It can normally eat 1 or 2 hits, and you just start clicking Terra Normal, Terra Normal, Hyper Voice, and Blood Moon, and yeah, it kind of runs through.
What would you say about Ogerpon or Farigiraf?
Giraffe's interesting because I'm not a big believer in Giraffe, but it's always metagame dependent. Right now, I think is really good. I think in a metagame where everyone's running double fake out, Giraffe, it's inherently good.
Can you explain why it's good, or like what about it makes it good? Because I actually don't know.
So its ability, I'm going to pull up Showdown at the same time here. Its ability, Armor Tail. So it's the same ability, very similar, I should say, to what Bruxish and Serena have.
Oh, okay.
So basically, it stops priority moves, right? Which is like, it's really good in a metagame where, again, you've got Rillaboom and Incineroar on like every team, so you can't click Fake Out while it's on the board. Also really good into things like Grassy Glide as well, potential E-speeds coming out and stuff like that, right? So it blocks priority, and because of that, it's always going to be very meta-dependent, right? Because its stats are good, it hits relatively hard, it has a very good HP stat, its speed stats doesn't really matter that much, it's just a middle speed mon. So yeah, it's like, it lives and dies by its ability. But I guess the big thing it has going for it right now is Calyrex Shadow being one of the best mons in the game, and it's a normal type, so that helps out a lot as well. Not to mention, it's just a fantastic partner on Trick Room, right? It has Trick Room itself. You can't fake out the Trick Room. You can't, prankster taunt it with things like Tornadus and Whimsicott. And because of that, it's just really reliable. You pair it up with like your own Incineroar, for example, and you just click fake out Trick Room and they can't do anything because you can fake them out and they can't fake you out. But yeah, I think Giraffe is it's always very dependent on the metagame and what's good. If priority is good, Giraffe is good. If priority is not good, it's probably not good. But the Ogerpons, on the other hand, I think for the most part, they're all pretty good. I think Teal Mask is the only one now that hasn't won a regional. But of course,
Cornerstone's
the Mask
won a regional?
It just won. Yeah, just won
Really?
Indianapolis. Yeah, it was on the Indian team.
Oh man,
It was on the
I
Nidal
totally
team.
forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that's its first regional, but I mean, Cornerstone was always built for restricteds anyway. I think having that built-in focus sash on a redirection mon in a format where, it's very powerful is always just inherently good, right? Not to mention they've got great speed and great attacking stats as well. So, yeah, they're pretty well built. But Wellspring and Hearthflame are clearly the two of the two better ones of the 4. Wellspring is just a fantastic support. Redirection, it's the best switch into Urshifu in the game. The ability to switch into a Surging Strike and redirect to Surging Strike is very good, especially because it's Follow Me and not Rage Powder. And then, I mean, Water is just inherently a good type, right? It's very good into things like Kyogre as well, because you can't Water Spout it, and it can just, Wood Hammer, Horn Leech, all that stuff.
If Wellspring Mask is so good with the Grass and Water type, do we think Ludicolo could win regionals at some point?
I think it has in the past, but
There
like
we
we're
go,
talking
right.
Gen 5, Gen 6.
And a past gen, yeah.
So Ludi was always notorious for coming back when Kyogre came back.
Yeah.
Because right now we're in a metagame where
rain dish.
Kyogre is surprisingly it's Swift Swim in rain.
Okay.
So you Swift Swim like with Assault Vest Life Orb. But yeah, so like, what was it? Sorry, I got sidetracked. Yeah, so Ludi always came back when Kyogre was good, and Kyogre is probably the worst it's been for a long time, but it's still probably a top 5 restricted right now anyway. When you got things like Miraidon in the metagame as well, like Miraidon, Koraidon, of course the Callies, it becomes a bit different. So yeah, it's still a really good mon, but Hearthflame is going to be the interesting one to see as everything develops, because it really does feel like it's just mini Zacian. Its Terra is insane. And not to mention Fire Grass is just a really good typing.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing to mention, I guess, about the Ogerpons in VGC is they have Follow Me, and they're all grass types, which means they can redirect Amoonguss Spores, which is very, very important. Because you can't sleep a grass type. So
The thing about all of these Gen 9 Pokemon is, like, especially Ogerpon, I would be concerned of whether or not they'll even return at least right away in Generation 10 or whatever the next game is, right? Like, a lot of these legendaries aren't always available.
That is true, but all of the DLC mons from Sword and Shield were available via home
Okay.
for Scarlet and Violet.
One thing I think you'll notice as well, and they've done it, I think the last like 3 or 4 gens, is normally the Pokemon will get like a 2 generation, especially like the DLC good mons. They get 2 generations on, 1 off. So like for example, we don't see the Tarpus and the Ultra Beasts this generation. They're not there. And I pray to God Gen 10 is just no Urshifu.
Yeah. Kind of a flip on that topic. Are there any Pokemon that you think are like could be so great if only they had maybe a new ability or maybe had slightly different stats, right? Obviously, this question could be talked about for 10 hours.
There is a right answer here, Scott. You and I have always talked about one of these. Your favorite mon, Scott.
Sceptile. Yeah. Give Sceptile sharpness.
Sceptile. Give it what?
I mean, sharpness.
But
then you got to flip it. So sharpness gives a 1.5 times boost to all cutting attacks, I think. So leaf blade, sacred sword, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
So Gallade gets it. It's why Gallade is also like see this massive spike in this generation. Clear
really?
Amulet plays a role in that too. Yeah. Gallade is like what is like the go-to for Psy Spam Trick Room now because everything that beats Psy Spam Trick Room just loses to Gallade. And Psycho Cutter in terrain with sharpness is insane damage. So yeah, Glade's actually seen some pretty good results as well with sharpness.
Give Sceptile sharpness and switch the attack and special attack is all I want.
It's funny, Lumi. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, we probably just need a regional Sceptile at this point because they would have to change so much to make it good that it feels like they would almost just have to give it like a regional form.
Yeah, it gets a regional form.
I want to win with that Sceptile.
Yeah, this is the best Sceptile.
If they got a different move pool, like some more moves added to its move pool, do you think
special attacks?
What, as in like the current Sceptile?
Yeah.
Look, it's always metagame dependent, right? Because the biggest issue I think Scarlet and Violet had was like so Series A was the regional decks without the Ruins or the Paradox mons, but we only had it for a month. And because of that, we really didn't get any time to test the game before the Paradox mons were introduced. And the top tier Paradox mons, you know, the Flutter Mains, the Iron Hands, Roaring Moons, they're so overtuned to a point where it feels like a mon like Sceptile probably can't thrive in a game where like they're good. Like there's definitely going to be a niche, especially since it just got Shed-Tail as well. So it's another. I think Cyclizar's still a faster Shed-Tail mon, but having Shed-Tail is still a cool niche. But yeah, it's I don't know. I think with Sceptile, it's like. It's really quick at 120 base speed, but if you look at like any format we've had in Scarlet and Violet, the only one where that 120 speed was actually fast was Series A. The second Flutter Mane got introduced, 120 speed just wasn't fast enough for a mon that is that frail. Like 70, 65, 85 is not good on the defensive end, and it's too slow. It gets outsped, it gets one shot. Again, Shed-Tail is cool. But I think its biggest issue is the way Unburden works, because in an ideal world, what you would do is go like, say, something like Citrus Berry with Unburden, and then you would like, you know, Citrus Berry, go to half health, you know, activate the sub for the guy in the back, then go back to 75. But then when you switch in, you're slow. You just lost your berry and you've lost Unburden. So I think if Unburden worked, where it's like, oh, if you don't have an item, you just double your speed, then I think there would maybe be a niche there, especially for like, if they added something like Flying Gem in again, because then you could do like Flying Gem, Acrobatics, and maybe there's some cool stuff there. I know I personally did test out what is it? Is it Mirror Herb with like priority swagger? So you go like you just like swagger the enemy, then you take the +2, and then you get your speed boost, which is like kind of cool. But
I feel like that was the Gen 5. Like I feel like those, what are they called? The gems in Generation 5. Yeah. I feel like that was the battle gimmick. That definitely was the meta.
It kind of was, yeah. It kind of was.
There actually was a battle gimmick in Gen 5. It was the Wonder Launcher. No, Wonder Launcher. It was like, as you battled, you would get these points that you could use items for.
Bro, get that out of here. That would be awful.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
If you waited long enough in the battle, you could use a max revive.
Dude.
That was a hint that was even to, man.
What's it called?
I don't know if they allowed it in VGC. I didn't, I didn't keep up with VGC then. I did singles.
Yeah,
but
neither did I. I would assume not, though. That seems stupid.
That's busted.
Just revive one of my Pokemon.
Right, just max revive, whatever. It's like,
my Cali
But that exists. That's it. Is that not in the meta game now with, what is it even called?
Blessing?
Well, see, Revival Blessing,
yeah,
but it's not, only 2 mons get it, and they gave it to a third mon, didn't they? I don't know.
No, Ho-Oh should have got it, everyone was saying.
Oh, he should have.
That would have been busted.
You were so right. Why did Hobo not get that?
Yeah, so there's just two. It's
I'm thinking
Pawmot and
Tidy
Rabscar.
Up. I'm thinking Tidy Up, because Tidy Up, it was a big deal because they gave it to Furret, and then they gave it to Chinchino as well.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
One thing I will say is Smeagol can't get Revival Blessing, which I think is probably a good thing. Yeah. That would have been really annoying in VGC if that thing could fake out, spoil you, and then just bring something back to life. So that one's
the Shadow Calyrex.
Yeah. That one's a good miss. Because realistically, Rabscar's never been good. Even in Series A, it wasn't a good mon. Which is actually surprising. It hits kind of hard, but I think it's because it didn't have the tools at the time to actually like excel. But Pawmot is like, it's an interesting one because I don't think it's inherently bad. And we did see it on a lot of Dozo teams early in the format where like you would bring in your Dozo, it would die, you'd get in your Pawmot, and then you just bring Dozo back. And then, you'd get your Tatsugiri out or something and then get it back in. And so that was, I think that's actually a decent mon because it has good stats as well. But similar to what I was saying with Sceptile, like 105 speed's really good until Fluttermane's in the game. And then it's like, it's just an average speed tier. Which is sad too because it's fast.
I like to, in singles, do Lepa Berry Revival Blessing with Pommet, which I think makes it where I automatically go to hell. I'm not sure, but
maybe.
Is there like an item that you wish existed? They've actually done a really good job over the last probably decade of Pokemon games. Every game maybe every gen introducing more and more unique competitive battle items. Are there any that don't currently exist? I think my favorite thing right now, or my favorite way to conceptualize this is to be like, oh great, what is it called? Choice Scarf is great, but what if it's like Choice Scarf for a different stat, right? Or I don't know. I'm just
Well, they have that Choice Band and Choice Specs.
Yeah, but do they have? I
mean,
no. I guess
the only thing we're missing is defense.
Yeah,
they have Assault
We're missing
vest,
the defense buff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean. Look,
but like any item
would be really cool. Yeah, Chiyu Nut.
Okay.
What?
Mega Chiyu Nut. That's what I need in VGC.
Chiyu Nut. Oh.
Chiyu Nut. Yeah. That would be sick.
I mean, they could do a defense version of Assault Vest.
It's only special defense, right?
Yeah,
Assault Vest is only special defense. Yeah.
The thing though is we don't have special Intimidate, so I feel like that's kind of why it evens
Give
out.
us that too.
That's something I think we do need is special Intimidate. What do we need?
Just make all of these options available. That's like what every generation does.
I think the issue though is like if people start slapping that on, then they may be worried that like Intimidate would drop off. I know it's hard though because like we just got Clear Amulet and Cover Cloak, which I think are amazing for the game. Like every physical restricted right now is running Clear Amulet, and it's like it's crazy because Incineroar just had like 70% usage, and every restricted is running Clear Amulet because of Incineroar. So like that's just a huge addition to the game. What else though? Like I kind of can't think of anything. I think they've done a really good job for both singles and doubles. Like even like the introduction of Boots a few generations ago was great.
Like you mentioned Clear Amulet, so I have to bring it up. My wife still talks about how she loves that team that she brought. Scott, for people who don't know, Scott actually helped me and my wife with our teams in both Orlando and Charlotte, and she loved bringing she had the Inner Focus Entei, Inner Focus Dragonite, and then for Charlotte, and she had Iron Hands with Clear Amulet, and she loved that.
Yeah. Now, Hands is good with Amulet as well. Just obviously it hits so hard, and it's actually not a bad mod into Incineroar either, surprisingly enough. But yeah,
the punching glove looks pretty cool. I didn't even know that was an item. It basically just increases punching moves. But like, why? Like they could
Iron Fist too.
They could turn sharpness into like an item, right? I feel like that's the way to go. It's like you take a cool ability, make it an item. Take a cool item effect, make that an ability, right? And then do one.
I mean,
yeah.
Because looking at this as well, like Loaded Dice was another fantastic like addition, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't affect that many mons, but the ones it does is really cool. Like Baxcalibur really liked it with like Sword Stand Scale Shot. Fairy Feather, I think, just had to be added to the game. Like it was the only one missing, so that makes sense. But I would say, like looking at this here, Clear Amulet and Covet Cloak are like the two big winners. Outside of like Booster Energy, but booster probably won't be around in a couple generations. Whenever
Wait, so Fairy
the
Feather,
Paradox ones.
all it does is increase the power of
Yeah,
fairy type moves?
Yeah,
So-
it's like Mystic Water, Charcoal.
Oh,
Yeah.
that didn't exist
'Cause it-
prior?
So we had Pixie Plate. So we had the plate for it. We never
For
had its
Arceus.
own. Yeah. So because like there was an item that matched up with every plate, right? So you had
Yeah.
Mystic Water and you had Splash Plate, Miracle Seed, Meadow Plate, so on and so forth. We only had Pixie Plate before. We never had a fairy equivalent. And that's kind of where that came in, I guess, to take that.
I'm just looking at this right here. The where is it? The Indigo Disc item. Did Tera? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the Tera type? Because we really were. I mean, you listened to the show. We really expected us like a brand new typing. Has the Tera type affected the meta game
Are
at
you
all?
referring to
Stellar is what
Stella?
I
in
mean.
I'm sorry.
particular?
What did I say? Yeah, the Tera type.
You just
the
said-
stellar,
okay,
the
so
stellar
Stellar
type.
Tera type.
The stellar Tera
Like
type.
there are a handful of Pokemon right now that are running Tera Stellar. Like we've seen Stellar Pelipper, for example, like Sash
Oh, let's
Pelipper
go.
running it. And the reason for that is like Hurricane picks up a Moongus if you go Tera Stellar, but also Weather Ball changes if they change the weather. So say for example, like I hit you with a Tera like a Stellar Tera Weather Ball in rain, and then my opponent changes it to Sun. I then get the Stellar Boost on the Sun version of it as well, because obviously it
Ooh.
changed to a Fire type attack. So that's cool. Chen Pals were opting for it to pick up KOs on things like Fluttermane, because like for example, every Fluttermane out there would like spec to live like Icicle Crash, and because of that, it was like, oh well, Crash can miss. You just go Spinner. Very hot topic. People have what they like. But yeah, so you just go like Tera Stellar, and then it just doesn't matter. Your Stellar Tera Ice Spinner would just like pick up. Is there anything else running it outside of those two? Like we saw a
I've
little
seen
bit of
Urshifu
Fluttermane
before. I've seen Urshifu run it.
I
I don't know how
would
common
run
that is,
Urshifu
but I've run
personally.
into it.
I've seen it too, but like for me, Urshi either wants to just go like water or a defensive type. It's either you go water or you go like Steel or Grass.
Yeah, I feel like it's. I guess
but-
what I'm thinking outside of the metagame, it really hasn't left that big of an impact to me. Like I feel like the
No,
Stella
it
Tera
didn't.
type, it came
Nah,
and went,
I think
and
it
it
was
was not that big
very
of a deal.
underwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like sorry, I was getting to it though. The best user is definitely Terapagos. Like Terapagos is actually a really good Tera Stellar mon. Granted, it has to use it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the mon is actually really good. Like we just saw it got second at Indianapolis. They were playing a choice spec set too, which was like really cool. So you just like come in, and you just start nuking turn one.
Nice.
But yeah, no,
Save
I
the
kind of
turtle.
agree. I think it's a pretty underwhelming type. Sadly, I think the drawback they added to the Tera Stellar Terra Blast was probably just bad. Like it's meant to be this move that is like super effective on Terramons, but like getting the minus attack just feels like makes it bad. I guess. It's
So
kind
just
of
run
dumb,
it with
yeah.
Terra Stellar Superior with Terra Blast.
Yeah, that's literally it, right? And like you could say the same thing about like a Namarus, but again, I don't know. It's a bit weird. The contrary mons right now are like not that good. But like there's definitely that niche there. It's just you've also then you have to actually target a Terramon, right? Like they have to Terra in order for you to be able to get the Terra Blast.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
so
no, I
even
agree.
then, when you take out that mon, what's it doing? Because you've taken out the
yeah.
Terra.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Terra Stellar feels kind of underwhelming, but again, maybe the restricted format is where it'll thrive. So
Yeah.
we got to wait and see how it goes, and also potentially we don't know what's going to happen next gen, right? Because normally the gimmick does follow. I think. Actually, that's a lie. Only Megas followed because we didn't get Dynamax this gen. We didn't get Z
we
moves in
did
Gen
get
8.
Z-moves,
So,
yeah.
so maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe it was just Megas in Gen 7, but yeah,
who
I'd be
knows?
interested to see.
We always say there's no patterns. They could definitely
Maybe
change things up.
Gen 10 they'll give us
Ooh.
like I've always
Everything.
pointed to the anime where like in the anime Ash did the world championships and which is also interesting, right? It was the world championships, which is what they called in VGC, but it was totally different. It wasn't doubles. But Ash
So stupid.
in the matches you were allowed to use either Dynamax, a Z move, or a Mega Evolution. Terra didn't exist. So
I could
That's
see that
cool.
happening. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, that is so cool. That honestly is what I would want to see.
So you
in
had to
Gen 10.
pick. So like there was even like it was cool to see the music because like there was even like his match against Raihan. He had gone into that match going, I'm going to Mega Evolve my Lucario, but his Gengar kind of got in a pinch and he literally like goes, sorry Lucario, and he has to Dynamax his Gengar and like sacrifice that gimmick or whatever. And that is a cool thought. Like I do like the thought of going into
Yeah.
a match going, I'm gonna do this,
Yeah.
but then having to go, it's better if I Dynamax here.
Can't you see a huge selling point for Generation 10 to be almost to imitate the what they did for Super Smash Brothers, where they go, everything is in this, right? This is Pokemon Ultimate, right? You can have any single battle gimmick. All your favorite Pokemon are in this. That's a huge. I could totally see them pushing that.
I agree, and I think the best thing about that too is the rules that you could change the metagame with, right? You say like, oh, we're about to play a metagame where you've only got Terras or you've only got Megas, right? And again, then you could open it up and say, okay, now you've got all of it, but you've only got one per battle. So then it's like, well, do I want to have like 2 Pokemon holding Mega Stones, 1 holding a Z move, and I can only use 1 out of the 3 every battle? Like, there's a lot of stuff they could do with it.
There's so many possibilities.
And I think with Gen 10 as well, I feel like we're going to see similar to what we saw with Gen 5 in terms of, one, there's a lot of competitive growth in Gen 5, but also, two, it's kind of a soft reboot to the series, right? Yeah. Like where, you go back to a region, know old mon, stuff like that. Like, I would not be surprised if Gen 10 was something like that, at least to start.
Yeah.
But look, there's a lot they can do with it. So I'm really curious to actually see how they...
Would Z moves even, be relevant with Dynamax being there, though, since Dynamax gives you the... Max. I mean, they could always buff it and just say, well, now all Z moves will do an additional effect, be even stronger.
My hot take is they wouldn't bring Dynamax back. I think it's too overpowered compared to any other gimmick.
Really?
The question is, why would I ever Mega a Mon when I could Dynamax them, right? Because it's like, I just clicked my, Mega Salmons, for example.
Yeah, but Mega's last. Also, people, I think...
the benefits of Dynamax just so outweigh.
Just end the game,
HP buff. You get the moves get stronger and getting a dash. I mean,
you're right. You're talking about VGC
setting
where
up
there's
rain is crazy.
No, this is true.
You use the water move and you get rain. It's a built-in rain dance.
Yeah, in VGC, there's what on average 5 turns before the game's over. 10 turns.
Maybe a little more, less than 10, I'd say on average. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it depends. If you're playing balance, then it's obviously going to take longer because I'm also pivoting around positioning, but.
I'm also thinking, I don't really think Game Freak is thinking about, this is unnecessary, or, this is a little redundant, because they create so many Pokemon that are redundant, right? They create, half of every single Pokedex has too low of a stat distribution to even be relevant, right? So I think for them, they're thinking about it more of what's going to be fun, and people like Megas. It's like uniting all the different generations of people, right, in fandom.
Which does seem perfect for Gen 10.
Doesn't it? I never really thought of it like that, but that we could actually be getting our battle simulator.
Yeah, getting everything back, I think, would be cool. And as I said, in the past, they did it. With the Ultra Series, there was one format where it's hey, you've only got Z moves. And the next format, hey, you've only got Megas.
Yeah.
And then I think eventually it was it wasn't until the very end of Gen 7 where they're okay, you've got one format with all of it, go.
That's
so
cool.
you could easily do that in Generation 10 where it's the first year of Generation 10, you're only allowed the generation gimmick, and then it's in year 2 for 6 months you get Megas, the other 6 months you get Z moves, and then maybe the next 6 months you get Dynamax, and then it's we're on the last 6 months of this game before Gen 11. You've got everything, go have fun.
Yeah, but that also positions Generation 10 to be this cumulative event, right? It's this big giant experience that is only around for 3 years, and then once we go into Generation 11, there's almost a reset, right? Where they can, maybe they can do that soft reboot type of thing that you're discussing, right? Where it's all of a sudden it's it had its moment, but now now the meta's shifting into a completely different direction, right? I think the things that I always gravitate towards is big changes that weren't battle gimmicks, but were still really big events. Growing up, right? I'm the old head, so I've lived through all of this. The special physical split, right? That was a really big deal. The introduction of a new type with the fairy type, that was massive. I remember I think it was Generation.
Hidden abilities was pretty big.
Yep.
Hidden abilities.
I was gonna say hidden abilities, and then also we had a bunch of stat reshuffling, mostly a lot of stats being increased. I think in Gen 7. We
get a couple of it. We get small scale versions of it.
Yeah.
In Teal Mask, I remember it was more so popular in singles, but people really liked that they gave Empoleon
competitive,
Sure,
and they gave Shiftry Wind Rider.
Yeah, that's where the whole conversation of Sharpness Sceptile came in as well, right? Yeah, it's hey, if you're gonna buff this, Because
If this is on the table,
if you look at all the starters, because I actually was working on a video for this. I did actually a massive spreadsheet. Unfortunately, I never actually got around to recording it.
I remember you
yet.
telling me that you were making a video.
But like there are so many of the starters, right? Which are like, let's be honest, they're the fan favorites. Right? My favorite Pokemon is Sceptile. It's actually not that good. Like I would argue, Trico is actually better than Sceptile right now in VGC.
wow.
Like literally, it pains me to say that, but it probably is. But then like you go through the list, right? Like Generation 1 surprisingly has good starters, right? Charizard and Venusaur are good. Blastoise is not. Generation 2 starters suck. Generation 3s in VGC at least suck. Singles, they're good. Generation 4, they all suck. Like maybe you can make an argument for Empoleon, but it's not good.
What do you mean?
Not anymore.
It's a fast mixed sweep
doubles.
Nah, VGC is not. Gen 5, they're all bad. Gen 6, they're all bad. Gen 7, we got Incineroar and Primarina, who are both pretty good. Obviously, Incine's probably the best Pokemon in the game. And then it's like, what? Generation 8, Rillaboom obviously is the second best starter of all time. The other two are both pretty bad.
Greninja was good in Gen 6.
Not in VGC.
Oh, okay, VGC.
It was good in singles, not in VGC.
Okay.
And then, Generation 9, surprisingly, they were all pretty decent. Quaquaval did get the short end of the stick, I think. Being a fighting type in a Flood of Main metagame was always going to be rough. But the other two are actually good. Sprigatito and Skeledoge were both like... I think their biggest issue was the fact that they had the most power creep by their like sub-legendaries out of like any generation. Like if Flood of Main didn't exist, not Sprigatito, Meowscarada would have been a top tier threat. It was the best Pokemon before Paradox Mons were introduced. So like it was actually a really good mon, but the issue is it was an offensive starter, and the second you get Fluttermane who like has a better typing, then it's over for it, right?
If you could delete any Pokemon from the Pokemon VGC metagame, what would you delete?
Like
for
right now,
reasons,
or just
not for like design or anything.
Oh
yeah, for competitive. Yeah,
it's really tough, right? Because a lot of people would just be like Incineroar, but Incineroar is actually very healthy. Like Incineroar brings balance, right? That's the beauty of Incineroar. Yeah, it's on 70% of the teams, but it brings balance to the force. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember all the memes when Incineroar was come back in Indigo Disc, where like they took Thanos and put Incineroar's head on it, and it was like you could not live with your failure. So where did that bring you? Back to me.
I guess. Look, my answer would probably be the Urshis. Just get rid of them.
Pretty mid
as
designs
much as
too.
I love them. Like I love using them. I've brought an Urshi to like every event I've played at since they've been legal. They're just stupid, man.
You did pretty well with a single strike one.
So I ran single strike at Melbourne and Perth, I think, and I got 22nd and 23rd at those two events.
Yeah.
So did really well with it. Single strike's really good. It turns out a guaranteed crit that goes through Protect is just it's good. It's a good Pokemon.
Who would know?
Very, very balanced signature moves with a balanced ability. Especially in VGC when everyone's clicking Protect, it's very balanced.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about Intimidate because you crit. It's good.
Do you think we'll ever see a new type? Because I ask this because every time I bring this question up, people always want to cite that Fairy type was introduced as a way of balancing the metagame. So what needs to be balanced right now? Is there something that needs to be balanced?
Fairy types need to be balanced. They should not be immune to dragon types. I think that needs to be removed. I do think a new type would be cool, but rather than adding a new type, I think they need to balance the current type chart. Like, for example, the bug type is bad. Like, bug, in my opinion, just make bug resist fairy. Just bug resist fairy.
Instead, they made fairy resist bug, and it's like, what? Yeah, they kicked bug while it was down. Like, what the heck?
It's even it's funny too because grass like defensively has one of the worst type charts in the game, right? I think it's got like 6 or 7 weaknesses, which is really bad.
5 weaknesses, but they're all incredibly common. Yeah. It and rock have the most weaknesses. Rock also has 5, but they're not as common as grass.
Yeah, so I would say balancing the type chart in a way where it's like you look at some of the more broken types, like for example the Fantasy Core, right? Dragon Fairy Steel, notoriously have always been really good together. Steel, I don't really know if you could. Steel's weird, right? Because I don't know if you want to nerf the Steel type defensively because that's what it's meant to be.
They did that once already.
But Fairy, I think Fairy both.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say Fairy should both offensively and defensively be nerfed. I think something else needs to hit it for super effective damage, and something else needs to resist it. I think
what would you choose?
So bug resisting it, I think, is good. And then from there, it's tough, right? In terms of like what hits it for super effective, because like
Ice.
ice maybe. I think fire makes a lot of sense as well, but fire is already like a really good offensive typing. Well, it resists it, but it's also just really good offensively. So I don't think making something else weak to fire is necessarily a good thing.
Fire types aren't that good though. I feel like most fire types are.
Oh
Like,
no, they are. No, they are.
Yeah, gouging fire and Incineroar.
Sure.
So Regulation F's viable fire types was insane because there was like a lot of Pokemon, right, where you look at the flying types, for example, yeah, and it was like, okay, if you're putting a flying type on your team, it's like Tornadus or it's Terra Flying Roaring Moon. Like that's it, right?
Yeah.
And it was the same. It was like if you're playing a fairy type, you're playing Flutter Mane. If you're playing a ghost type, you're playing Flutter Mane. It was like in Regulation F, if you're playing a fire type, there was like a 10 viable options. It was like, oh, you've got Chi-Yu, you've got Incineroar, Gouging Fire was obviously a really good one as well. Torkoal was also really, really good in that metagame. And like the list goes on, like there were good mons. Like even prior to Reg F, like Heatran was really good back in G. Ogerborn Herflame is also like a really good fire type. Like there's a lot of really good fire types in the game.
Yeah.
And Entei, another great one in Reg F too.
Sheesh.
Like
I was
honestly,
thinking of Houndour.
there was no more. Nah, that's
Houndour is not good.
Yeah.
Like I'm pulling it up on the side here just because I don't like Arcanine was another really good one as well.
Sure.
Who else we have here? Volcarona has been good. Obviously Incineroar we've spoken about. Arbor Rouge is another really good fire type as well. The fire type is stacked. Like it is honestly there are too many good fire types. Like it is the most contested type.
It needs
in the
to
game.
be nerfed.
Yeah, which is crazy considering like Incineroar is the most used Pokemon and it's a fire type. But then it's like every team that doesn't have Incineroar has a fire type, it honestly feels like a lot of good teams even have two fire types. Like right now, maybe not so much, but in Reg F, it felt like every team had two fire types.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I like that
the
answer.
fire typing's really good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that it would make sense for grass to resist fairy because like all the fairies are usually tied to nature. So like, the logic there would be like
that.
grass can't be hurt by something that's always protecting it, you know?
No, I like that a lot. I think
it makes, I don't know how that would do in a competitive standpoint, but I think it makes sense from a logic standpoint.
Yeah. So we're thinking, do you think electric, I feel like electric type needs a boost.
No.
I mean, it only has one weakness.
The beauty of electric is it's just neutral across the board.
Okay.
Like that is what, like, for example, Miraidon, just dominated Indianapolis when no one expected it to do good. That's partially why it was so good.
Okay.
But they would just click Terra Electric and it's like, oh, now I have one weakness and it's ground. And we were in a metagame where there was no good ground types. That's why I think, as well as saying earlier about Blood Moon Ursaluna, I think it's going to be good because it feels like every team needs a good ground type right now. And realistically, it's the only good one. Like maybe regular Ursaluna as well is good. But I don't think the Landorus forms are good right now. Great Tusk isn't good. Iron Treads isn't good. It's like literally the two best ground types are the two Ursaluna forms. And you need a ground type to play against what's his name, Rhydon right now. So
yeah, and I mean even aside from Miraidon, we've seen a ton of electric types be popular this gen, like with Raging Bolt and
Brian Hands.
Iron Hands, of course. Yeah.
I mean, like Iron Hands dominated the metagame until Incineroar came back, and then it's like, oh, we have Incineroar, but we also have Raging Bolt now. It's like, oh, Raging Bolt's now dominating the metagame. So,
what's the current status of Scizor?
Who?
Scizor.
Who's that?
What do you mean?
That's the status.
That's the status. So, Scizor's entire purpose, this entire generation, was it can one-shot Flutter Mane.
That's good, dude. That's pretty. I would say that's actually.
But it's a bug type
essential.
issue.
It's really good until the fire
but it gets
swaps in, resists its stabs, and then one shots it
with Mystic Fire.
With anything,
Ember will kill
with
it.
Ember.
Oh really? Jeez.
My Chimchar's Ember's probably gonna one shot it.
Scizor. I remember when Gen 9 debuted, I saw that Scizor got so many additional buffs. So I just assumed it was good this generation.
I think
In
Scizor's
singles it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think Scizor was. It's one of those.
I was watching
Pokemon.
Again,
like
that's why.
Like I think it has a good kit, right? Like Swords Dance is good. Obviously, it loves Clear Amulet. It also liked being paired up with Rain, and Rain for the most part has been pretty good. It loves Terror as well, so it can get out of its 4x weakness. But yeah, I don't know. I think again, it kind of just comes down to the whole power creep side of things, right? Like Iron Hands, for example, resisting the Steel type moves and then just like two-shotting it, it's not fun. Damn. And again, like we don't see Iron Hands anymore, but we're at a stage 2 where like ever since Chi-Yu came in the metagame, it's like, are you really bringing that so it has to Terror? But it's a Chi-Yu. Like, even if you Terra Water, I'm probably still going to two-shot you anyway with a Heat Wave. So,
all right.
Yeah, it's a little underpowered, sadly.
I'm not offended. That's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
So
he's very upset. He's going to cry about this.
Where do you fall on? Just tell me this. What are your opinions on genning Pokemon?
Yeah, I don't care about it, honestly. It's like it's when it comes to genning, I think it's a loud minority.
Yeah, actually, can we set up what genning is to the audience?
Yeah. So genning is essentially rather than actually like breeding, catching, training your own Pokemon, you basically just have a computer do it for you, and it takes like a whole I don't know, 5 minutes maybe, if that. Yeah. And the argument is it saves you a lot of time, but realistically, for someone like me who plays the game, like I play the game a lot, especially when it first comes out. I'm sitting on like 500 Tera shards for every Tera right now. I've got like 100 fresh dark mochis. I've got hundreds of like every other mochi in the game. I'm sitting on $10 million in game and enough treasures to probably make another 20 million more. Like, I'm capped out on money. So for me to get a team in game, it takes me less than an hour. So when people sit there and say like, oh, like you gen your Pokemon, blah, 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 like, especially like, the Voldemort of the VGC community, he's always sitting there like, oh, it's an unfair advantage. That time you spent getting your team could have, I get my team on the plane to Perth. I had a 4-hour flight to Perth. I had the team done in the first like 40 minutes. Like, it's people who gen, I don't care. Yeah. It's like, like when I prepare for an event, I normally prepare for 4 to 6 weeks. That extra hour that you could save from genning, to me, it's like, it's not why I'm going to win or lose a game.
Yeah. If someone beats me because it's not worth being disqualified either.
Well, that's the other thing, right? In terms of like an actual event, don't take a gen team to an event. Like when I found out Brady Smith took gen mons to Worlds last year, I was like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
Like that's silly, yeah. Like if you, especially if you're going from like America to Japan, I don't know how long the flight is. You got 10 hours. I'm sure you could.
Oh, it's from East Coast. It's longer than that. I mean, from East Coast, it's about a day. I mean, it's.
I'm pretty sure Brady's East Coast as well. But one thing I will say though, in regards to genning, is the big reason why I think I just don't give a shit about it right now. Sorry for the swearing there. Is a lot of the good mons aren't catchable in game. The genies, you cannot get the genies in the game, right? And I think that's what happened at Worlds last year with Brady, was like he said he couldn't get his like Tornadus and his Urshifu legally, so he had to gen them. Or I think he got a friend to get them for him, and the friend gen them, right? That was
I think he traded, and that was
that was the whole issue there. But for me, it's like, okay, like, I own every game, like so for me, it's whatever.
But you recognize that is like a privilege, right? To have every single game, because honestly, as someone, if I was getting into competitive right now and I missed some events or whatever, or maybe I don't have access to some of those Pokemon, like that almost seems like an advantage, an unfair advantage.
Yeah, it especially like the thing I do, because I'm just I think my audience knows this, but I am anti-genning, but I'm not, I still have compassion, and I do totally empathize, because I do think, I'm kind of like you, where you said like it's kind of easy to gen or to train them up or whatever, especially in Scarlet and Violet, and especially with Indigo Disc. They've made it like a joke to get money and get all these things. Oh yeah. But I do think, like, I do sit there and think, okay, if Enamorus isn't the most popular mon in VGC, but if you're wanting to run Enamorus, you have to play through all of Legends Arceus and then catch Enamorus. And then the big issue with Enamorus in its Therian form is that it's a great Trick Room mon, but the issue is you would have to get its speed IVs at 0 for it to be a perfect Trick Room mon. Yeah. And the reason that's difficult is there are no IVs in Legends. So what you have to do is you have to catch the Enamorus, send it to home, and then see if the IVs are right. But the issue is if the IVs are not right,
you have to put the whole game.
You have to restart Legends and go from the beginning of Legends. Pick your starter.
And that's going to take longer than 45 minutes on a flight to Perth.
Yeah.
I feel for that.
The other thing with genning too is like, what about poor little Timmy, who's like 14? He's a seniors player. He's trying to get into VGC, and it's like, oh, I really need Tornadus for my team. Mum, I need you to go buy me Sword and Shield, and I need the DLC.
Right.
And then Mum's like, Timmy, I just bought you Scarlet. I'm not buying you Sword too. Right. And then little Timmy's like, well, I don't have a Tornadus, but I really need Tornadus, so I'm at a competitive disadvantage. Like, that's my issue, is like, if everything was in Scarlet and Violet and it was easy, then there's no excuse for Jenny,
yes,
right? It's like,
absolutely.
Then they have made it incredibly easier than it was.
Oh yeah,
like when I was growing up,
it easier.
Like we didn't even
100%.
I played competitive with my friends.
For me, it's not an issue of like the IVs and stuff availability. For me, it's the Pokemon availability.
Exactly, 100%. And as I said, I don't care, right? If you want to gen, I don't think someone's going to beat me because they gen, right? But I'm also in a fortunate enough position where I buy every game. I buy both copies of every
100%.
game. I beat them all. I've got it all. Yeah, I've got my BDSP. You know, I'm at the end game in both of those. I've beaten Legends Arceus. You know, I've beaten Sword and Shield. Like I've got all the resources I can need. But no one has. Not everyone, I should say, has the resources I have, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's my issue. And like I've seen, like, again, I make VGC content. People come into my videos all the time. Hey, I can't get X legendary. What should I put on the team instead? And then it's like, you know, like I for example, I have a Tornadus team. Hey, I can't like get Tornadus. What would you recommend me replace it with? I'm like, well, it's a pretty, like, you know, pretty important part of the team. It's my Tailwind and my Rain Dance setter. It's like, without Tornadus, the team doesn't function. So it's like, you know, you're in this weird spot where it's like, poor Timmy can't get Tornadus, so he can't actually play the team he wants because the team revolves around it. You can't just, like, for example, even Whimsicott, you can't just slap Whimsicott on a Tornadus team because Whimsicott doesn't get Rain Dance. Like, Whimsicott can be slapped on a Sun Tornadus team, but it can't be slapped on a Rain Tornadus team. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I think too, like, we'll have comments that are anti-genning that'll say, after this conversation, well, why don't you trade them? But the issue with trading is that they've removed GTS from the main game. So first off, you have to have Pokemon Home to trade. But then even aside from that,
Home's not legit.
Their own hack checks on Pokemon Home are garbage. If you, I dare you to go on Pokemon Home and trade on the GTS for any kind of legendary or even one of the paradoxes like Iron Crown or Gouging Fire, it will be hacked. I promise you.
Dude, I had a friend of mine message us in like a group chat, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I finally got my Cali Ice on GTS." I'm like, "You're an idiot.
No,
never take that Cali Ice do not take that to an event. If you take it to a regional, bang, you're done. You're done."
Luckily, sometimes it'll be obvious. You know, sometimes I tried to get an Iron Crown, and when I summaried it, it was like, its name was like sub to so and so, and it's like OT was sub to so and so. It had max IVs, and it was like.
And look, the other sad thing about this too, right, is when I first got back into like competitive with the start of Sword and Shield, right, I knew genning was a thing, but I didn't realize how easy it was. I thought like if you wanted to be a genner, you had to have like all this fancy equipment.
I think it was like that back in the day.
It could be. I don't know. But like I got into the game, and like I remember grinding all these Dittos out, like grinded them out so I could like do all my breeding. And then someone I met on like a Facebook group page was like, "Hey, do you just want like my Korean Ditto for like Masuda method?" I'm like, "Oh, great." And he's like, "I've got 4 of them for you." I'm like, "Oh, 4 Korean Dittos, I'll take those." He trades them to me, and it's not until like a year later where I realized like he just gave me 4 shiny Korean Dittos with like perfect natures. They're not legit.
No, but their offspring are.
And their offspring are. And the sad thing is, at the time, I would have been, I was probably 21, 22 when it dropped. And again, it was just me it didn't even go through my mind that these weren't legit at the time. But it was like, I'll take him. Imagine some 16, so even younger, like a 12-year-old kid getting his Cali Shadow off GTS. Like, oh yes, like finally I can run my Cali Shadow team at the regional. And then he just fails the hack check because he traded for something off, like, again, off their system, right? If it's legal for me to trade it, but it's not legal for me to play with it.
Absolutely. I do agree with that. I think too, the big issue I have, like, to counter the people who are pro-genning, the biggest issue I have is when people take something they know is gen and then they whine on Twitter when they get kicked out. Because my thing is like, okay, this isn't even a discussion of is genning okay or is genning not. This is a discussion of you knew it wasn't, you brought it, and now are mad. Like, what did you think would happen?
Yeah. I think the thing that frustrates me the most as well is, like, I have my, small group of friends that I, team build with. We talk about, like, I'd say in my Discord, we have maybe 10, 15 people, right, that play VGC actively. And we help each other out. If one of the boys is like, oh, I need a Raging Bolt for the event, it's like, I'm not playing Raging Bolt, have mine, yeah? And then he'll just trade it back to me at the end of the event. And when I see these top players, right, especially like guys who stream the game with, maybe they're streamers with like 100 viewers, right? Or like 100 viewers per like stream, but they got 5,000 followers. You're telling me you couldn't just put in your Discord chat like, hey, can someone lend me like a mon for the event, especially too because like again, if you follow a streamer, you'd be like, oh, that's cool. I want him to use my Raging Bolt at the event. Here, have my Raging Bolt, Mr. Streamer, man. It's it really.
I think some of that does happen.
No, it definitely does. Like Wolf is notorious for like. Yeah. I don't know if he still does it now, but I know back in Sword and Shield, Wolf didn't ever like breed his own teams. Like Wolf had his mods do his teams for him. And again,
but that is what gets kind of sketchy about it, right? Because then it's like, well, where are they getting it?
Well, that's the thing. I think that's why with Wolf in particular, he only did it with his mods because he trusted the mods. He'd be like, hey, mod team, this is my team. Can you get it for me? Yeah. Because again, like it'd be different like for Wolf, who's got 1 million followers going into his open Discord saying like, hey guys, I need these 6 mons.
Right.
Yeah.
And then some random guy's just like, oh, here's my...
Someone has it in 5 seconds. Like,
here's my totally legit mon. Yeah. Where at least if he goes to his mods, these are obviously people who've been around his community for years. You know, he probably speaks to him. He's like, hey guys, you know, can someone help me get this team? I'm on my flight to Orlando. I need it when I land. You know, that kind of thing.
And I think even then you get into the discussion of well, is that fair? Not because like, you know, obviously it's fair because like Wolf isn't doing anything wrong by doing that, but I don't have
fair is subjective.
I'm 14 years old and I don't have 1 million subs on YouTube and none of my friends play Pokemon.
But that's why I think genning isn't necessarily because when I think of cheating, it means an unfair advantage. And to me, the battle starts, or the unfair variable really starts once you enter the battle, right? And so to me, it's like in any other sport you're playing, right? You can buy the most expensive sneakers. You can buy, you can buy a bunch of creatine and then pay for an expensive workout or whatever it might be, right? And none of that matters until you get onto the court, right? I guess
counterpoint to play devil's advocate.
Sure.
Sports performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah, but I'm
doing that off the field.
Yes, but you're right.
Me on the field.
But I would group that in. I would relate that closer to like putting like Earthquake on your Raichu, right? Giving a Pokemon an illegal move. That's what I would relate that to.
Yeah, I agree because like I can gen I can gen a perfect Fluttermane in 5 minutes, or I could train one up in 15. It's gonna be the exact same. Like, my gen Fluttermane doesn't have, 5 extra speed points that yours doesn't.
But for little Timmy, who's 12 years old, that might take him, a whole weekend to create it, right? So then it's like, well, is that really fair?
Right. And again, I do think Pokemon needs to make it more available, absolutely, because they need to... If I can't get Enamorous, I know this probably would be kind of controversial in VGC because, they like being able to use Urshifus and stuff like that. But of course, Urshifu is available now with the snacks. But if I cannot get it in Scarlet and Violet, it is not playable in Scarlet and Violet. It's how it should be.
I agree. There are 2 changes I'd make that I think fix majority of the issues. 1, if you cannot catch it in the game, it's not in VGC. Simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah.
2, just give us the rusted bottle cap. Let me reset. Like, let me just say, oh, my Enamorous, it's perfect speed. Here's a rusted bottle cap. Now it's 0 speed. Issue fixed.
I don't want to trigger half our fan base by bringing this up, but Riddler Koo says that one of the things that was scrapped from Scarlet and Violet DLC, and you can debate on whether it was scrapped or he's making it up, but he said there was a feature to make your speed IV 0.
Yeah, and they removed it. Make it attack 2. Make it attack 2. Because I'll tell you right now, I hunted a Kyogre. I got my Kyogre 0 attack. It's great. Yeah, it didn't take me that long, thankfully. But I have a friend, for example, over the last weekend who's just gotten into VGC who wanted a Walking Wake, right? So he wanted it from the event. He did over 100 raids trying to find a 0 attack Walking Wake, and he got it on like 112 or something like that. So like he literally spent his entire Saturday hunting a Walking Wake, just beating it, catching it, resetting the raid.
And that's not just that's not an aesthetic. That like literally gives.
Can you even do that? Because I thought you can only catch one. How would you see it?
So what you do is you turn off autosave, so it can't save, and then you play offline. And then you would catch it, check the IV, it's not out, reset the game, go to the next one.
Yeah. And then you time skip because you're having to solo the raid, so that's obviously making it a good bit harder.
Like, I was super fortunate that when it came to Walking Wake, I was gonna do it. My very first raid, I caught one. Perfect, sweet. And then I'm like, but the issue then is I want to catch 2, right? I want to catch one of my Violet version. But then one of my friends was like, hey, I found a 1 IV one. do you want to jump in my raid? And then he just shared it with everyone.
Sure.
I did the same with my zero attack one, but that's how we did it, right? Me and my friends, like a couple of us found them, we just shared them with each other. Yeah. Like I hosted a raid because like what you can do is you turn on the raid and then you just like reset your switch.
Yeah.
So then your friends like all catch it, but then you don't catch it. So then you can go back into it with your other friends because like the raid is set when the day starts. So as long as as long as you get in and you find that zero attack, you can share it. And that's what we all did like a year ago when Walking Wake was first like dropped, or it was about a year ago I think. But my friend who's just getting into VGC now, we can't help him because we've all caught 2 of them on both our games.
Right.
Well,
and I think that's something that I suffer from as well, because like with Walking Wake specifically, I wasn't doing VGC, so I caught my Walking Wake and I caught the first one and I saved my game. But then later I get into VGC, so now I need my zero attack Walking Wake.
It's funny you say that too, because recently, not recently now, it's probably 6 months ago, but I was going through raids in Sword because I wanted to get certain legendaries, right? And when I'm hunting for a legend, the best way, if like, for example, say I'm hunting Rayquaza, right? I need to find a Rayquaza raid. The best way to get it is just catch every legendary that you don't think you're going to need in the future. Because it's just like, I don't need Latios, right? So because of that, I can just catch it. Its IVs doesn't matter. But then it turned out at the start of Regulation F, Latias was actually really good because it resisted both Urshifu Rapid Strike stab moves, right? You're a Dragon Psychic type, so you resist water and you resist fighting. So for the first month or so of that metagame, Latias was actually really good, and I almost brought it to Melbourne. Like, I was really close to bringing it to Melbourne. But because I was like, just like catch whatever, my one had like perfect attack, when ideally it would have zero attack, which thankfully, so far in PSV, it hasn't mattered. Like, you don't really need zero attack. Because like Swagger doesn't run around, there's not that much confusion. But obviously in a metagame where, in the future, maybe it is necessary, I'm going to really wish I had a zero attack one, which again, I can catch it in Scarlet and Violet, thankfully. But
Aaron Traylor brought Foul Play for Rigoraph just in Indianapolis.
Foul Play's picking up, because again, like it hits a lot of mons really hard, and so people are starting to run Foul Play again. So you want your Spectre or your Kali Shadow with zero attack. But again, I don't have a zero attack Kali. I'm actually about to buy the DLC for Shield so I can go catch a zero attack Kali. Because I have no better way to do it.
Yeah, I think Pokemon and Game Freak have always valued the RNG of the competitive scene. Sure. I think the entire point of, originally they were called DVs, but the IVs and the EV system, it's to make sure that every single Pokemon feels unique. However, slowly over the course of 20 years, right, as the metagame has grown and people have realized that it's basically like these like differentiating factors are no longer, they're just like not needed, right? Like they only hinder
for the record, that's not true in VGC. In VGC, like in singles, you're right, like that is true. Like in singles, most of the time you were running a timid, max speed, max special attack Flutter Mane, but like in VGC, people have started going, okay, well, I'm actually going to do my Flutter Mane modest, and instead of giving it all this stuff in speed, I'm going to give it enough defense to where it will live an Icicle Crash from Champao.
I mean, a great example right now is Flutter Mane's running like 188 HP, 132 defense. So you're investing 300 stats in your bulk before the game even starts. And then normally you're hitting that speed stat you want, which is like 180, and then it's kind of just dump into your offense from there.
Yeah, I think all of that control is great, and I think that's really what Game Freak needs to continue to give us, but ideally give it to us in a way that's obtainable by any player, right? Whether that's a battle simulator type of thing, or maybe they just open it up to us in Gen 10. I don't really know, because there's so many other options, right? One last thing I want to say before we go over to the Patreon, show. I remember during like the crypto boom, Game Freak, or there was some like job listings at Game Freak for people who understood the blockchain technology, and it really got me thinking. I know this.
What is that?
It's or maybe was it blockchain? Maybe it was just crypto, or what is it?
Oh, crypto. I do remember them.
No, was it crypto?
NFTs.
Yeah, NFTs. That's what I was thinking of. I'm sorry. Yeah. So one part of my brain definitely associated this with the TCG craze, but part of me is also wondering if they actually fulfilled those roles, and possibly we could see in the future some sort of technology that could bypass or prevent hacking in the future, right? Because it's very clear to me that Game Freak, is it Game Freak or is it just a Pokemon company, I guess, who runs these tournaments, right?
TCPI. Guess who
Yeah.
runs the
So the
events.
Pokemon Company International, they want to prevent us, obviously, from genning our Pokemon. But it's
I
like
can add
if
something to that as well.
if the technology exists, I'm like, I don't know. It's like you either give, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
So, one thing I'll say, and again, obviously we'll have to wait and see how things develop. But a good friend of mine, after the issue that happened at Worlds last year with everyone getting DC'd, reached out to one of the prominent like hackers or whatever. It wasn't K-Phonics, but it was someone who is pretty close with him, from what I understand. They work together with the PK hacks and whatnot. They believe that this is probably the last generation where we're going to be able to gen. They reckon that because essentially the only reason, from what I understand, that we were even able to gen in the Switch era in the first place was that like there was some mistake that was made, or like something they missed when they first dropped the Switch, and that's why you can hack the original Switch. But like I don't think you can hack any Switch besides like the launch day model of the Switch, something like that, right? They reckon if that is not missed in the Switch 2 or whatever the successor will be, then it will be incredibly hard to gen on that. Like it may even be impossible to gen for the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, great. I mean, that's
Well, I think that's another thing to point out too is I think the biggest issue that Nintendo has with genning is that in Japan, genning is literally illegal.
Yeah.
Like it is. It's not illegal at tournaments. It is the law. Like I remember a man went to jail for sending out perfect IV'd Sobbles and
I think he was selling them though. He was selling them for like the equivalent of like 30 USD, which crazy. Who's buying a Pokemon for $30?
I know.
Funny side story as well. There's a guy
Sobble too, which has never been that prominent. So.
Oh, actually, I think there was a stage in Sword and Shield where Sobble was actually good, or at least in Teleon. There was like one metagame. I don't know much about it. But a quick side story. There was a guy I was like coaching like a year ago. He reached out to me, asked for coaching. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I think he was from like the Philippines, and he was buying his teams. And he told me he would pay a guy like $15, and the guy would breed his team. And I'm like, brother, he ain't breeding that team.
Yeah.
See, it was, and again, it was like I don't know why people like don't pay for your teams, guys.
Yeah, I really don't see anything wrong with that, though. I still don't see anything wrong with that. To me, I'm like, you're just saving time.
Exactly.
You can go to a tournament a day. Well, I don't know how it is in Australia, but here we have like a day 0, right, at our tournament.
Yeah, you always do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they ought to have like a booth set up where I can walk up and go, here are my 6 Pokemon. Can you check them? And that way they can review them before the tournament started and go, ooh, your Urshifu's hacked. And so then I can make the call on Twitter. Hey guys, my single strike Urshifu is hacked. Can y'all, can someone give me one? You know?
And again, I think the issue is like, I think there's a lot of issues with the genning, right? Like, to me, the simplest thing is just, hey, make it so it's easy enough that I don't have to gen.
Yeah.
Right? Make it so I can catch, like, obviously now you can catch Rapid Strike in game, but that came out with DLC 2. I couldn't catch Urshifu Rapid Strike when Reg F dropped in August last year. Or not Reg F, Reg D, sorry. So that's like one major thing. Again, give us the bottle caps. Like the rusted bottle caps to me fix a lot of things. Like right now, the normal bottle caps and golden bottle caps, they're a godsend, yeah? Because it's like, oh, I just caught this shiny, Litten. That has a mark.
Let's make it good.
You can buy them now.
Bang! I'm sitting on like 80 gold bottle caps, man. Like I don't care. If I like, for example, I went and caught a Trico for a video. I didn't end up using it, unfortunately, but I caught a marked Trico. Oh, great! I'm just gonna bang, bang, bang. Give it all the bottle caps it needs. That's fantastic. But you can't do that with Trick Room Mons or Zero Attack Mons. So if they added that into the game, just give us rusted bottle caps. Sure. Say, hey, if you can't catch it in the game, it's not legal. Ideally, you don't put anything super good outside of like a cover legend behind the version exclusive, because I get it, right? Obviously, don't let me catch a Miraidon in Violet and vice versa. And thankfully,
I still don't have an Iron Boulder, which thankfully like isn't really needed.
So Boulder and Crown do annoy me, because again, they're the only ones you can't cheese. So I don't know if you guys know this, but if you like get into a friend's if you guys union circle with a friend who's on the opposite version, you can actually go and catch the Pokemon from the different game. It's really annoying because you can't actually just like see them properly. But if you guys stand exactly on top of each other, which again sucks because you can't see each other. But say for example, I'm standing on top of Lumi, he's in Violet, I'm in Scarlet, and there's a Fluttermane right next to me. You can see that Fluttermane. And me and one of my friends actually cheesed it so that we could catch shinies from opposite versions. So for example, what we did was I was on my Violet version, he was on his Scarlet, and we found a shiny Iron Bundle. I saved the game. He took the encounter, so I couldn't get it. But then I reset the game, so I got the shiny Iron Bundle too.
Wow.
So that's how we
that.
cheesed it. Yeah. So that's how he got his like Iron Bundle, his Iron Hands, all shiny because we found them in my world. And then I just saved the game. He took the encounter. I reset the game. I get the encounter too.
Wow.
So you can cheese it. So essentially, the only ones where you can't get in the game really are like Iron Boulder, Iron Crown. What's it called?
Yeah, but those version exclusives aren't going
yeah.
anywhere, right?
And then the
that's
restricted.
another thing that's integral.
Yeah. So they're like the only 6 mons in this game that you can't get, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Which is fine because
you actually can, because you can if
you can trade one.
The
yeah.
group barbecues, you can get the other restricteds.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I thought you meant Crydom Rhydon.
Oh
so
yeah, Crydom.
Really, they're those two and Raging Bolt and maybe Gouging Fire as well are really the only Virgin exclusives in Gen 9 that matter. Yeah. Crown to a certain extent actually as well because it's decent. But yeah, like thankfully it's much smaller than previous generations. But yeah, just let us catch every mon in the game. You know, give us the bottle caps, and I think going into the next gen will be sweet because they are obviously taking a lot of great steps. Like the Mochi was actually like a fantastic step because the mini game is fun just to mess around with friends. Like we would do sessions where we just sit down for 2 hours. In 2 hours, you can probably beat it 8 to 10 times, and if you beat it 10 times, you just got 200 of like every Mochi.
Yeah,
and then that's all you need because like you only need 25 to max out a stat. So as long as you just like, you know, if you do 200 times that by 6, you got 800 Mochi. That's enough to like fully, you know, deck out like probably 4 to 5 teams, which realistically, unless you're a YouTuber like myself, you probably don't need that many teams, right? Like I make a lot of teams just because, you know, I make videos with the teams. But even now I've gotten to a stage where a lot of the time it's easy just to steal someone else's team, right? Yeah. It's like, for example, I was going to remake the team that just won Indianapolis, but like Talon beat me to it. So I'm like, why would I remake the team when I could just steal his rental?
Sure.
It's like I shout him out. I'm like, hey guys, you know, check him out. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, which is great for the community too, right?
Yeah, and I saved myself. Yeah, I saved myself like an hour and a half of actually getting the team in game because then I'd have to trade my Miraidon over to my Scala, and then I'd have to like, you know, get all the IVs, make sure it's bottle capped, and yeah. So
that's great.
I think any way that they can minimize the amount of time it takes to get a team in game, I think it's just great for the community, right?
Absolutely.
The more time we save, it benefits everyone.
All right, let's switch it over to the speed round questions. If you want to listen, there's a link in the description. You can become a channel supporter or join our Patreon. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being here. Tell the people where they can find you. I'm honestly Lumi set this up, and I'm so glad you're on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at ScootEasy. Name's just there, I think. A lot of people spell it wrong. That is easy at the end. EZY. It says easy. Yeah, that's me there. Oh, gee, throwback. That's my first ever YouTube video, boys.
Yeah, I was looking at your oldest. I was gonna ask you. We don't have time, but I was gonna ask you how you started your whole channel. But maybe we'll have you on again.
I started with Nuzlocking into leaks into VGC. That's the journey there.
I love that.
And then yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at ScootEasyVGC.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
here it is.
That's it. So yeah.
And thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for.
It was great having you.
Yeah, it's so good. So good.
Soul missed out on a fun episode. Soul.
He's probably so happy. He wouldn't have said one thing.
Maybe one day I can talk to Soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll organize that.
We're not saying Scott
you might be
is
his replacement.
Soul, but we're just saying
in Italy.
they've never been seen on the same voice call.
That is true.
That is true. You know,
he's
overseas. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, there's another video right here you can click to continue watching. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes, is it called iTunes? Maybe just Apple Music. Is it iTunes? Is iTunes still real?
It's Apple Podcast.
I think
Apple Podcast.
Yeah, Apple Podcast is what I thought too. Yeah.
Wherever you watch your podcasts, we should.
Yeah, exactly.
There.
Subscribe
YouTube,
and leave us a review. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.